across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And yeah, good afternoon. Welcome to the programme. Welcome to the Home of Common Sense. Thank you to Kev, of course. Back tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. Naturally, we're going to continue to focus on President Zelensky and Donald Trump holding what they call promising talks on Ukraine, with Trump offering NATO-like security guarantees tied to a $100 billion weapons deal. Kind of funny when you're talking about peace to bring up the issue of weapons, but hey, that's how it rolls in the geopolitical world. A potential three-way meeting with Putin was discussed, but fresh Russian missile strikes kind of cast doubt on efforts for peace. We'll look at that story and asking, is this the way the war in Ukraine ends? Details on that. Also this afternoon, Sir Keir Starmer backed the display of English and Union flags as councils like Tower Hamlets face backlashes for removing St George's flags, while in some cases even allowing Palestinian ones to remain. Critics slammed the double standards as residents defended the flags as symbols of patriotism and frustration over British identity being silenced. I think that last point is really relevant. Just answer me, what should the rules be when it comes to flags? Details to come. And Israel weighs a ceasefire hostage deal brokered by Egypt and Qatar, with Hamas softening demands under military pressure. While some Israelis back the deal to save hostages, hardliners warn it could legitimize Hamas and risk future conflict by preserving its strength. That was a very convoluted paragraph, Finn, I have to say. But I think we've got the gist of it there. Details on the way. It's interesting on the Trump thing. Is this the end of the war in Ukraine? Is this the beginning of the end? Trump was running the show. I mean, if you saw any of that yesterday, Trump was running the show like Tony Soprano. I mean, he genuinely was. He had this thing, he was cooking, and he was firing on all cylinders. Macron looking like some spitting image puppet, nodding sage-like at every moment. Chancellor Merz looking like a man who couldn't quite work out what he's doing there. That bloke from Finland looking like a man who couldn't quite work out why he was even invited. Maloney rolling her eyes every time one of the men in grey opened their gobs. And Starmer doing his best to look like a statesman, but mostly just looking like a bloke who wished he'd remembered his cold sore cream. It was the oddest combination, and more like something from a reboot of The West Wing. Stuff like this doesn't really happen in real life. And when the pleasantries were over, this farrago of peacemakers made their way to another meeting to save the world. It all got a bit bizarre. There was meetings after meetings. It was bizarrely choreographed. Zelensky showed up looking all 4'8" of him in a bit of a suit. It was just a bit of a suit. And away they went. Some waited in the corridor having a sneaky vol au vent before they were called in to the bit with Donald, because he was in the Oval Office with Zelensky, and then they left the Oval Office and Zelensky and Trump went to another room in the White House, and that had lots of microphones and a glass of water around it, and J.D. Vance was sitting in the background, and Peter Mandelson was sitting in the background, and the cameras were all over the place. And suddenly Trump says, "Make a statement, Mr. Zelensky," and he makes a statement with his back to the cameras because no one knew they were going to do that. And then they go round the table, they all say their little bit, all trying to trumpet a similar choreographed line, but all ideally in their own world, sharpening their own ego as they did it. I don't quite understand what the point of all that was. However, let's be serious on this. This is all about striking a deal. This is all about getting everybody around the table, particularly Russia and, of course, Ukraine. Is that likely to happen? Mr. Macron has already suggested, apparently, Switzerland as central territory for this to happen. Maybe it will. But I want to throw this question out. Is this the end of the war in Ukraine? 0344 499 1000. So let's just work on that question. Do you sense from everything we've seen, and it's all looking rather positive, but you have to remember 90%, no, they've done 10%. They've started talking a little bit, and then Putin carries on bombing Ukraine. While that's going on, You know, that's a bloke that's not messing around, right? You've got to get him around the table. So while the peace talks are going on, he's still killing people on the ground. He's happy to do that while the peace talks are going on. It's a big middle finger, isn't it, to the entire collection of everybody sitting around that table, particularly to Ukraine. I'm not to be messed with, and if you get your peace talks, you'll be darn lucky. So what does it mean for us as well, as the UK? As Kev made the point, you know, this is a very simple point, but a very succinct one. As far as the UK are concerned, if there is no peace, then what are we meant to do? Commit to another 10 years of billions and billions of pounds of aid? I get it. It's on our continent. It's essentially in air miles. It's not far away. It has ramifications outside of Ukraine for the international community. It would be a war on our own doorstep. We don't want to see that. And we all understand every bit of that. But do we commit to, what, another decade of just sending larger amounts of money every 10 minutes? 0344 499 1000. What are you making of it? Is this the beginning of the end? Is this how the war ends in Ukraine? Thoughts on that? And what about our inclusion in all of this? Where do we sit? We're in a slightly different position to all of the others in that we're not in the EU. But of course, this is about a European response, not an EU response. Although I did notice Ursula, I forgot her on the list, sitting around there grinning away, just happy to be anywhere that endorses her sense of being a bit important. 0344 499 1000. Drop us a voice note on that as well. We are asking the question also about flags. We'll get into more detail in the next section, but what should the rules be when it comes to flags? I mean, I don't know how you can't plaster one up anywhere you like, all right? That would look a bit weird. And also, if you're going to put them up on you want to make them look good. It's no use a kind of half-assed flag being shoved on with blue tack on Primark's window. That just looks a bit dodge. You want something that looks a little bit, you know, flags work best when there's a sort of uniformity around them. If you go down the Mall in London, there's perfect symmetry of Union flags hanging in a beautiful way. So they've got to look right. So what is the rules around this? But I thought that point that we made right at the beginning, that much of this is a response, not just specifically about flags, about a frustration over British identity being silenced, imagined or otherwise. That's a very real view, that there is a sense that, hang on, this is the United Kingdom. This bit over here is England, that bit's Scotland, Wales, Northern, you get the picture. 0344 499 1000. Let's get a word on this and the other big stories of the day. Steve N. Allen, the comedian and broadcaster, is back with us. Afternoon to you, Steve.
Good afternoon. It's nice to be here.
Always lovely to have you with us. It would have been nicer if you had one of those big oak desks like they had in the White House yesterday, so where you could press a button and your microphone would go off and you could give a 10-second speech.
Yeah, do you know what? If you'd have warned me about that, I could have got the fitters in. But as it happens, I've got a MDF desk.
That's all right. Nothing wrong with a bit of MDF. Let's talk, though, about President Zelensky praising his talks with Donald Trump, raising hopes for peace in Ukraine. This was a dramatic, I think we can reasonably say, summit in Washington. Trump pledged it's a very good security guarantee. It's an odd way to describe security guarantees. You got good ones and really good ones, and this one's a fabulous one. So he said that much. It's for Ukraine, and reportedly interrupted the meeting to brief Putin, who's, of course, Mr. Trump is pushing for that three-way deal with the Ukraine. Let's have a listen then to the US president yesterday during that meeting.
I don't think you need a ceasefire. You know, if you look at the 6 deals that I settled this year, they were all at war. I didn't do any ceasefires. And I know that it might be good to have, but I can also understand strategically why, well, you know, one country or the other wouldn't want it. You have a ceasefire and they rebuild and rebuild and rebuild, and, you know, maybe they don't want that. But if you look at the 6 deals, we made peace and you know, long-term, long-running wars. I didn't do any ceasefires. And I just spoke to President Putin indirectly, and we're going to have a phone call right after these meetings today. And we may or may not have a trilat. If we don't have a trilat, then the fighting continues. And if we do, we have a good chance. I think if we have a trial, there's a good chance of maybe ending it. But he's expecting my call when we're finished with.
And an hour and 16 minutes later, Steve, Putin dropped 110 tons of bombs on Ukraine. So I'm not quite sure whether the timing was ideal on that point. But this is obviously Putin saying, yeah, I'm still here. You can't, this isn't a done deal.
I suppose, although he might have just watched that clip with Trump saying, we're not interested in a ceasefire, and Putin's like, go, we can do it. Now is exactly the time to do it.
He's just said so.
I think I've often thought, people talk about Trump delusion syndrome, or whatever it's called, where people who hate Trump really hate Trump. He can't do anything right. There's also a delusion on the other side of people who think he can do no wrong, both of which statistically impossible positions to hold. People who go around thinking kafefi is a real word just because of that tweet. He's never used it in a sentence since. There's got to be no one's infallible, right? But even if you're not a Trump guy, if you think he's got many problems, you've got to hope that for whatever reason, this pays off. His motivation are most likely to be financial and business. Fine. Do you know what? If a war ends because a businessman wants to do business, who are we to complain? It's also, he's clearly chasing the Peace Prize. That's the one thing he wants to get now. He wants to do something, another trophy for the collection. Fine. Do you know what? If that's the thing that motivates him to get two people who wouldn't ordinarily be in a room together to end a war, we should be grateful. So it's very easy to sit around and try, nitpicking, oh, he's not doing that very well. If this brings about the end to this war, all of our gas prices and fish and chips should get cheaper because that's why it's more expensive, apparently. So we very much need to focus eyes on the prize here. Yeah,
it's about the fish and chips, isn't it? Is this why you didn't get the job at the UN, Steve?
I went in with the fish and chips thinking this will be a great demo, and they didn't really see the point. They really didn't follow. This is a show and tell day.
They just don't think outside the box over there at the UN. That's their problem. I mean, it was interesting, and I suppose there's no way around it. You have to say, look, in the previous 3.5 years, no one else has got to this stage. So there they are in the White House. You've got significant European leaders there. I know they looked a little bit sort of bit part characters in all of this, but nonetheless it's their territory, of course. And you've got the President of the United States who's just met the President of Russia. Now he's meeting the President of Ukraine. This is a significant step. There's no two ways around that.
And it's so much better than it was, isn't it? If we remember what it was like the last time they had a meeting, when there was a row about a suit, there was the row about not saying thanks, and of course all the media outlets, quite rightly and hilariously, played the clip of him saying thank you right at the start of that meeting. Like, yes. the idea that he's got such a telling off for not saying thank you, and he literally had. So this time, was it 6 thank yous at the start of the meeting? That's got some passive aggressiveness to it. I've had relationships like that, where it's like, sorry, is that the word you want to hear? That was the vibe, wasn't it?
I think he had it written on the back of his jacket, actually, this time.
Yeah, he bought in the box set of the Ronnie Corbett sitcom just to really drive that point home.
Absolutely.
That's what I would have done. And also with all of our leaders turning up there, look, we can mock and say they seem a bit pointless. Fair, again, if it brings about the right outcome, I love to see the European leaders sit around and do nothing. It's good that they weren't needed, that they didn't have to go to bat to try and stop Zelensky being shouted at for wearing the wrong outfit. All of this so far is better than it was back then. And I was on your show saying this, that if you have a peace meeting where two of the sides agree, that's not like a negotiation, that's ganging up. So it's going to end up being some sort of raid. Well, thankfully now, there's been some tough talk to Putin, some threats of these third-party tariffs to ruin their economy even more. And do you know what? The big problem that Russia's got is economic. So the idea that someone's going in there talking business and money, it's not actually a bad thing. We can think it's not the same moral high ground of saying we're going to end this war because of saving lives. But if you end it to sort out economies, it still ends.
It still ends. We'll have more on that story. We are asking the question, is this how the war in Ukraine ends after what we've seen over the last few days, in particular yesterday in the White House? Let's move to this story, back to domestic matters, Steve. Keir Starmer wading into the flag row after that second council vows to remove St George's flags as Starmer backs patriotic locals. Now, this was interesting. This came through a spokesman of Starmer when asked about whether or not he supports the flags. He expressed absolute support for displaying English flags and Union flags amid controversy over councils like Tower Hamlets removing them. They announced the removal of the flags raised by locals during Operation Raise the Colours campaign. They said it was down to safety concerns. Now, look, I get it. You can't put a flag anywhere and everywhere. There's got to be some sort of flag etiquette somewhere. But there is definitely a sense of something really bizarre going on. If you walk through a place and there's a lot of Palestinian flags and they go, no, you can't put a St George's flag up there, that's just a bit weird.
Yeah. I mean, they start off with the argument saying it's like health and safety. You can't just slap anything you want on a lamppost. Fair enough. I totally agree. I'm a little bit put out by how many missing cats I have to read about. Find your own cat. But if you've previously put up Palestinian flags, well, you've lost the argument, haven't you? If your rule is no flags on lampposts, then you've got to stick to it. Or you need to apologise for the ones you put up in the past. So it's not about lamppost safety, is it? It is about which flags you get to pick. So here's the awkward thing. This is going to get me some hate online. You've got to look at the Venn diagram. There's nothing racist about the flag, but we can be honest, racists love the flag. And why have we ended up in a situation where the flag seems to have some sort of link? It's because we've not been using it enough. Yeah. I mean, for some reason, it's a circular logic thing that the left made. The flag is racist, therefore don't use the flag, meaning that no one dare use it other than a racist. No, you created this problem. What we all need to do is use the flag as much as possible. If you're not racist, use a flag. Do you know why? I'm Spartacus. That's why. If we're all using flags, then there is no political problem with the flag. Because even if it's a racist using the flag, here's the sticky wicket that we need to address. They got you. They got you on a technicality. It's a national flag, and you can never ban a nation's national flag in that nation. Yeah. What a stupid sentence that is. So we should know that to be true. So let's just relax. I remember 1997, cool Britpop, Cool Britannia, all of that. You couldn't move for Union Jacks.
Yes.
I had a car air freshener. My belt was. I had a cushion. They did a mini with it all painted over it, and no one was going, well, that's a bit racist, because we were just using the flag. Get out there and use it.
Yeah. And the Ginger Spice Girl had a dress made of the flag.
Yes, and I don't think she was doing it for racial reasons. Was she raising the colours when she was doing that?
That's a very good point, actually. She was raising something in some houses, I can tell you that. So back to 1980s sitcoms against it. Listen, we will take a short pause. We will, of course, return with more from Steve and Alan in a couple of moments. Comedian and broadcaster with us. Your thoughts on all of this, whether it's the flag, whether it's Ukraine, whatever's going on. We're living in an upside-down world, kids. There's a lot of reasons to be confused, a lot of reasons to be angry out there as well at the moment. 0344 499 1000. That's also where you drop us a voice note. You can message 87222. The time now, 1:20.
They take more territory, and again our response is, okay.
Well, what do you think we should do?
You've been bad again.
Well, what would
we'll
you
let
suggest?
You keep
All right, what's your remedy then? If we declare war on them, have World War III? Is that what you want to do?
Well, ultimately, if Russia is gonna keep invading people, then yes.
Yes. Well, you want World War III. Dan Hodges wants World War III. Page 1 tomorrow morning, Daily Mail. Let's have World War III. Are you going to send your kids out to fight for you?
Well, Mike.
Oh, you've gone mad, Dan.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, here's a sort of timely curveball in the developments coming out of the White House, which ties into exactly the question I asked at the beginning of what would our role be after all of this. Trump has just given an interview to Fox News in which he has said that the UK, France and Germany will put boots on the ground. Trump was speaking after the session, of course, and says he hopes Vladimir Putin is going to be good. If not, he's going to be in a rough situation. The US President added he thinks Zelensky and Putin are doing okay. Asked about the prospect of security guarantees, Trump says European nations are going to front-load it. They want to have boots on the ground, he adds, referencing France, Germany and the United Kingdom. He says, I don't think it's going to be a problem. When asked whether he can give assurances there won't be any US boots on the ground, he said, you have my assurance and I'm the president. I just want to stop people being killed. I don't know where he specifically got that from. There has been references about boots on the ground, but that's going to be a big headline in the next day or so, because that, of course, will force Starmer, at the very least, to say whether he will or whether he won't. There you go, Steve. Some breaking news on a breaking story that we were breaking 15 minutes ago.
Indeed, yeah, and it's always about boots. You know what the problem is? That phrase, boots on the ground, can be a bit vague. You imagine right up on the front line defensive forces, and that's not probably what's been spoken about. It's the trainers and it's the engineers. Always the plan is to deploy them in areas that aren't actually the conflict zones, but it does mean two things. It keeps the Ukrainian army ready to fight and hold that line, and it means you've got another area that you can't attack if you're Russia, because then you just attack British troops.
Indeed. And if you're a local cobbler whose business is called Boots on the Ground, then you're probably thinking, hey, there's a whole new spectrum of entrepreneurial possibilities for me. Who knows? Let's move to this story. Gary Lineker, fresh from his controversy over the BBC exit, has landed a National Television Award nomination for Best Presenter. Of course, he's bit of a history, Mr. Lineker, divisive social media posts, including accusations against him of anti-Semitism. He's aiming to break Anton Deck's 23-year streak of getting the Best Presenter award. Let's remind ourselves of his teary goodbye. I can hardly hold it together here on Match of the Day.
Thank you. I suspect our paths will cross again very shortly. Let me take this opportunity to thank all of the other pundits that I've had the pleasure of working with over the last 25 years. You've made my job so much easier. Also, a huge thank you to those you don't see at home. The work that goes into making this iconic show. It's been an absolute privilege to have hosted Match of the Day for a quarter of a century. It's been utterly joyous. I'd like to wish Gabby, Mark and Kelly all the very best when they sit in this chair. The programme is in the best of hands. And my final thank you goes to all of you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for all your love and support over the years.
There it was. Are you all right, Steve? Are you OK to talk?
Yeah, I just got my cloth.
Yeah, it's all right. I get it. We're all in it, brother. We're all in it. He's got a big gong coming his way, apparently. For that.
Anton Deck, anti-Semitism, more like. It's that doesn't even make sense as a joke, but it
kind of
does.
It? Yeah,
it kind of does.
Work in progress.
Here's the problem with it, right? It was a dumb thing to be tweeting things that are so controversial if you want to keep your job, and you know what the BBC's like. The three new presenters have already made a statement saying they won't be doing controversial stuff. Of course they won't. I'm sure that came up in the interview. Do you know, the BBC aren't stupid. They'll be like, do we plan on saying anything about Nazis? No, good, let's crack on. In the same way that I don't know who's going to be in charge of the news at 10 in the future, but in the interview, they'll ask a question about your thoughts on teenage boys. It'll come up. Do you know what I mean? Yes. Whereas the flip side is, I don't care. I know I could say anti-Gary Lineker stuff now, and I'm sure some people are like, yeah, right. I was never interested in football, so I'm the wrong target demographic. But these were his personal tweets. And in the same way I didn't get angry when Andrew Neil was tweeting Brexit-y stuff and working for the BBC. If he'd have said it on telly, I still wouldn't have watched it because it's football, but I would have agreed, lose your job. But you tweet whatever you tweet. Otherwise, then we're policing tweets. And I've managed to go through my life, and I don't think I've ever read a Gary Lineker tweet. And I'm absolutely fine on it. I'd recommend it if I were you.
Yeah, indeed, you have a little look. I'm kind of slightly confused that the presenter of a niche, you know, as much as you might like football, but it's still niche stuff, late night stuff, would even be in the nominations for Best Presenter. You know, you want to see, you know, I'd be less surprised if Greg Wallace was up for Best Presenter, you know?
Yeah, for his Instagram videos, yeah. Don't get me ranting on awards things as well. They're utterly pointless. These are people who've managed to look out and get a job that so many people would love to have. Sure. And then somehow award ceremonies crop up to pat each other on the back some more. I'm a presenter, but who's the best presenter? Oh, I'm the best. Get over yourselves. So it doesn't matter. None of these are actually about talent. If it was just about ratings, the list of Barb figures would tell you enough. If it were about talent, well, it'd be unmeasurable. It's just about the industry patting itself on the back. So when is the chance to give him a pat on the back, there's enough people in the industry who want to. All of it is an absolute waste of good money. The amount of money you spend on these stupid awards, you can tell I've never been nominated, can't you? There was one year when I was doing the MASH report when everyone else on the main cast got nominated for a comedy award and I didn't. So maybe that stuck with me.
You kept that quiet at the time, Steve. You never told me that.
Well, I was ranting quietly in bathrooms to myself.
I did the public vote. I voted for you. I think you should know that.
Why, thank you. I don't believe a word of it, but thank you.
And let's just finish with this one. It's new woke madness, as the phrase goes, as a council bans staff from calling married couples husband and wife in case it offends somebody. This is the Royal Borough of Greenwich has advised staff to use gender-neutral terms like spouse or partner instead of husband and wife. There's a 45-page inclusive language guide. Also discourages addressing groups as ladies and gentlemen. Or asking for Christian names. The council emphasised the guide is advisory, aiming to foster inclusivity and avoid offending individuals who do not identify with traditional gender roles. Number one, how much time have they got on their hands? Number two, how the hell did we survive until this point in our anthropological journey without this kind of guidance?
Yeah. Question one, how much time have they got? They should know. They're in Greenwich. Question two, yeah, it's unbelievable, isn't it? Like, how we don't need any of this. There is no part of the phrase husband and wives that's ever really offended anyone. I was reading the entire story thinking the best time this advice could be used is when you don't want to accidentally, we're not talking about misgendering. We're talking about, when you get it absolutely plainly wrong. This is like the start of the parrot sketch. Excuse me, miss. That kind of moment, right? Just because someone's got a slightly brutish wife, you don't want to accidentally say sir. I think that's what I'm trying to say. That's the only time that advice is useful. The rest of it, you're not going to go to that registry office and get married now, are you? You may kiss the whatever. It's not what you want at the end of your vows, is it? So
it does slightly take the edge off things, doesn't it?
Yeah. I'd start to change my mind if anyone could find anyone who is genuinely offended by this before they heard that it was a problem.
Yeah.
Not because it's gone on social media or something. You find someone who's got an anecdote they tell down the pub. You never guess what. They said, ladies and gentlemen. Yet no one's ever been offended by that.
Well, there was one bloke, wasn't there? The fella on the train a few years ago who was on, I can't remember which train company it was. He was a passenger, but he oddly also worked for the train company.
Yeah.
And he identified as being non-binary, which, with respect to what anybody wants to call themselves, there's no biological science in that phrase. It's just a phrase somebody has chosen. And he apologised. He wrote to the rail company and said, I'm offended that you said ladies and gentlemen. And oddly, I think he might have done it on Twitter. They wrote back and apologised. And they even used the phrase, we will never use such language again. As if they'd effed and jeffed across the tannoy system on the 1222 to Swansea. This was just nonsense. So they kind of caved in. I wonder if today, when things have kind of relaxed a bit and the hysteria is dying down, whether they would have done the same thing.
Maybe, yeah. I suppose they just thought, what's the path of least resistance to get our heads down and don't get like some online backlash?
Yeah.
But look, you got a choice. If you sat on a train and the tannoy announcement says, ladies and gentlemen, and you don't think it's for you, don't listen to it. Miss whatever platform changes happened, or realise this is just what happens in announcements. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we should entirely ignore that sector of society. It's just such a small... You can't expect everything to change because of like 0.02% of the population or whatever it is, in the same way that you don't have to not pay attention to it. Honestly, it feels like the only way you can be offended is if you're sitting there going, what can I need to find a thing that will somehow I can claim that I've been done wrong by. I'm the victim.
Yes, I mean,
the
guy that was on the train, I mean, he wasn't really offended. You know, nothing happened. I can't remember who the comedian was, the Aussie comedian, I think it is, that does a whole routine on, you know, did his arm fall off or something? You know, nothing literally happened to him. And nobody cares if he was offended, but he felt that that was a trigger, a moment, the green light for him to, you know, rally his, whatever it was, his inner thoughts of synthetic anger to the train company, and they caved in, and he did all right out of it.
If that's the worst thing that's happened to you on a train, we have not used the same trains, because
100%.
The train experience in the UK is abysmal. If you was sat there and heard an announcement, be lucky you got a seat. For that to happen, you could call me whatever name you want, and I would willingly take that insult as long as I got to sit down.
100%. Steve, thank you as ever. Steve N. Allen, the comedian and broadcaster, with us on the programme. Anything you've heard there, do chime in. 0344 499 1000. We'll get back into that question as well. Is this how the war in Ukraine ends after that Trump summit? And boots on the ground. There's a new angle on the story. Details coming next. And, of course, over to you too. Our lines are open. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed Talk 25 to 2. This one comes from Fox's fan, who says, you know full well it's not Russia that are at fault. The Ukraine started the war back in 2014. Do your research and stop pushing the West warmongering propaganda. It's the West EU that don't want peace. Bojo told that to Zelensky not to sign any peace. That's not quite what happened, actually. You need to do a bit of research. Yeah, you can think what you like. We live in a democracy, of course. Very few people think that. Donald Trump doesn't think that. Most, I think, Western countries, maybe China, you're probably in good company with China, who might have a different view to you on that one, but it's not a controversial view to talk about who invaded Ukraine. And you can go back to 2014, go back before that, if you like. Where do you want to run with this? Take it on every day of the week, mate. 0344 499 1000. So, Trump offering Zelensky a very good Ukraine security guarantee is the big headline. Mr. Zelensky has praised the talks with Donald Trump, raising hopes for peace. Of course, during that dramatic Washington summit, Trump pledged a very good security guarantee. That's the word words he used for Ukraine and reportedly interrupted the meeting to brief Putin as well. Let's have a listen to the US president.
I don't think you need a ceasefire. You know, if you look at the 6 deals that I settled this year, they were all at war. I didn't do any ceasefires. And I know that it might be good to have, but I can also understand strategically why, well, you know, one country or the other wouldn't want it. You have a ceasefire and they rebuild and rebuild and rebuild, and, you know, maybe they don't want that. But if you look at the 6 deals, we made peace and you know, long-term, long-running wars. I didn't do any ceasefires. I just spoke to President Putin indirectly, and we're going to have a phone call right after these meetings today. And we may or may not have a trilat. If we don't have a trilat, then the fighting continues. And if we do, we have a good chance. I think if we have a trilat, there's a good chance of maybe ending it. But he's expecting my call when we're finished with this meeting.
He's expecting the call. How did that all go? The bombing does continue. In a moment, we'll cross live to Kyiv and get the view from Audrey McAlpine, an American journalist based over there. First, Roland Oliphant is the chief foreign correspondent over there at the Telegraph. Roland, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
You've been writing about this for a long time. You know this area, this story very, very well. Just give us your assessment of what's happened in the last 24 hours, because these were kind of extraordinary scenes. I couldn't quite keep up with it. I thought it was a reboot of The West Wing at some point, but there they were, sitting around. There was a sort of meeting followed by another meeting, and then there was the public bit, and then another meeting, and now today there's another meeting. I think tomorrow there's going to be another one. So your assessment of what we've seen in the last day.
I mean, first of all, I think I should say you're absolutely not alone in that. I mean, I kind of had my head down typing to produce stories yesterday, and of course, every time I looked up, it had moved on and it was out of date. It was impossible to know.
Yes,
I woke up this morning, I was doing the same thing. Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, it is. I've been covering this war, you know, for the more than a decade it's been going on, and this really does feel like quite a remarkable moment. It does look. I'm surprised to say this, but I kind of feel like it does look like even Vladimir Putin is potentially moving towards some kind of settlement, or he's certainly open to a deal that he thinks is good for him. Whether he gets it, I don't know. But yeah, this is it's an extraordinary moment, and there's a huge amount of, you know, you can see that from the number of European leaders who flew to Washington to back up Zelensky, because they feel that, you know, something could really come out of this this time. Doesn't mean it will. I mean, it could run into all the obstacles that every other effort to settle this war has run into over a decade. All those obstacles are still there, but nonetheless, there does seem to be a chance here of quite a historic, potentially a historic full stop, potentially on 10 years of conflict.
Indeed, and of course, in basic terms, this may well involve Ukraine having to concede some kind of land.
Well, so this is the really tricky, sensitive point of view. The basic reality is that Russia occupies Ukrainian territory. Ukraine doesn't really occupy much Russian territory. Essentially, Ukraine has given up on pushing the Russians out through military force, which it looked like it could do for a few years. At the moment, they're talking about holding Russia to incremental gains and exhausting them. So it comes down to this question of, does Ukraine formally give up what Russia has taken, accept that Russia legally now owns that land, or even, as the Russians want, hand over even more land that Russia claims that hasn't captured? Or do they go down a kind of North-South Korean route, where you end up freezing the front line, you don't admit that the war is over, but you stop fighting, and you say, okay, let's kick this question down the road, and that frontier becomes a kind of a de facto border behind which Ukraine can rebuild. And if that were to lead to decades and decades of peace that allowed Ukraine to continue to operate as an independent state, that would represent, I think, an unpalatable but perhaps digestible outcome for Ukraine.
We'll get a view from Ukraine in a few moments. What do you say? I mean, there is a view, and I just read out one tweet a second ago, Roland, and it's an opinion you would have heard many times. Those that don't buy into this idea that Russia are the invaders, the agitator, the protagonist here. It didn't work that way. In fact, it was Ukraine that started the war in 2014. Now, everything I've read and researched on this, I've done Lord knows how many debates. You've been writing about this for more than a decade. And I look back at 2014 and the war in Donbass, Russian paramilitaries going in. It doesn't look like that to me. Where does that view come from, that actually the Russians are the good guys and Ukraine are the bad guys?
I think it partly comes from just plain old Russian propaganda and lies. And I think it partly comes from just a degree of contrarianism, I would say. I mean, it's complete nonsense, as you say. I mean, I was there. I was literally there when the war began. I watched it happen. I watched, Russian mercenaries and desperados take over police stations in East Ukraine, 14 years ago. I watched Russian troops fan out across Crimea. I spoke to the man who led the operation to start the war in Donbass. He told me himself how he led 50 men, across the border to start the war. And the idea that Russia is not the protagonist here is, it's for the birds. It's complete and utter nonsense.
And what about that line again that comes up from time to time, that there was a peace deal, Boris Johnson told Zelensky not to sign it? There's a bit more to that story, isn't there?
So early on in the war, around kind of shortly after the Russian the full-scale Russian invasion, after they've been stopped outside Kyiv, and things are really still in the balance, there is a series of talks in Turkey between Ukraine, or in Turkey and then in Belarus and then Turkey, between Russian and Ukrainian officials, which don't actually come to anything in the end. But around that time, Boris Johnson, if you remember, becomes the first leader to visit Kyiv. And around that time, those talks fall apart. So Russian propaganda has kind of taken that and said, well, the reason the talks fell apart is because Boris Johnson came to Kiev and he told Zelensky what to do, because Zelensky is nothing but a puppet of the West. I think what really happened was that Boris Johnson went there and said, look, we've got your back. You don't have to just surrender your country and accept defeat because we're standing by you. Yeah. Other things happened at that time as well. Russia was defeated in the battle for Kyiv and had to retreat. And at that point, it was clear that Russia was unable to simply wipe Ukraine off the map as they planned to do so. And also at the same time, as they retreated, the atrocities that were committed in Bucha and other towns were discovered, which hardened public opinion.
Indeed. And just a final point, Roland, is breaking in the last sort of half an hour or so, as you will be aware, President Trump claiming in an interview with Fox News that the UK, France and Germany want to put boots on the ground to secure peace. He rules out putting US troops to join them. Your reaction to that?
That would fit with my understanding, and that means that things haven't moved as dramatically as we were led to believe. So Donald Trump refused until what you've just read out. Until 5 minutes ago, I was about to tell you, he hasn't ruled out putting US troops on the ground. Now he has. This is the classic example of what we were talking about everything moving so fast. He's returning to his old position. He's always said he doesn't want to put US boots on the ground. The French, the Brits, and other Europeans have, for that reason, been working on an alternative which would see British and French troops on the ground instead. They would like to see the Americans offer some kind of backup, such as air support, because the whole point of having those troops on the ground in the event of a ceasefire is to deter Russia from coming back. Because quite reasonably, the Ukrainians and the Europeans say, look, what is the point of us agreeing to a peace deal if all it's going to do is give Vladimir Putin time to rebuild his military and come back? We need something to makes him know that that's not going to work and he's going to lose that war if he tries it. So that security guarantee and the details of it are really crucial.
So that's a peacekeeping force, to give it a title.
I mean, when you this debate has been going on for ages. When you speak to like British and other European officials, they say things like, "Oh no, no, they've told me it's not a peacekeeping force. It's a reassurance force, or it's a something else force, or it's a. And I think that's a real problem because what they really need are clear rules of engagement. Because the question they're going to face is like, okay, what if Russia does invade? Then what do British soldiers or French soldiers on the ground do? And if you haven't addressed that question, then putting them there creates massive risks.
Indeed. Don't write that up just yet, Roland, is my only advice, because it's probably going to change again in an hour. So, save yourself the bother. Have a cup of tea instead.
Will do.
Listen, great to have you on. Roland Oliphant, he's the chief foreign correspondent at The Telegraph, with his take on what is happening out there. Let's get a word from Audrey McAlpine, American journalist in Kyiv. Audrey, good afternoon to you. No doubt about it, whatever way you slice it, this was, of course, a moment in the White House. It's got that far. It's further than it was half an hour before it happened. So what are we making of what we saw yesterday in Washington?
Well, here in Kyiv, definitely people woke up with a big sigh of relief. They were happy that it wasn't a repeat of that last Oval Office meeting. But just before joining you here, I was speaking with people in this square behind me, with regular Ukrainians who said that for them, they felt that still nothing substantial really came of it. There were 3 items that were meant to be discussed. It was the secession of Ukrainian territory, namely the Donbass region. There was the question of U.S. security guarantees or European security guarantees, what they might look like, and a ceasefire. And we got sort of muddled feedback from all 3 of those points.
What is your, I mean, you know this territory very well. What is your assessment of what the average Ukrainian thinks if Zelensky and Putin carve out a deal that involves ceding some territory to Russia? We're not talking about the capital, but we're talking about those key areas that Putin is obviously very interested in and is making claims on. Would that be, is there a red line there for people, or would they understand that might be the price you've got to pay for peace?
Well, it's interesting because there are sort of 2 different worlds that exist in Ukraine. There are those who are fighting and there are those who are not. And they naturally share very different opinions. Those on the front lines feel that they have to avenge their fallen brothers. There's no scenario where they see themselves giving up areas like the Donbass. But then everyday Ukrainians feel that they want this war to be over. They've fought too hard for too long, lost properties, lost loved ones, and they may be open. I spoke to some people in the streets the other day who said maybe there could be some sort of national referendum. But either way, they all agreed it needed to be a decision made among Ukraine. And even still, I went up to some and I showed them a map and I said, which areas would you be willing to give up? And it was interesting because though people felt that they might be open to this idea, they couldn't put it in themselves to actually point on a map. It was still much too sensitive.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big ask, isn't it? When you consider what's really happening here, do you want to give away some of your country to somebody who invaded you? It's as brutal as that, I guess. In terms of hopes, we know that Putin carried on bombing despite what was happening in the White House. That may be roostering on his part, making the world aware that he's not going to just roll over because of a couple of meetings with some European leaders and Zelensky. Do you think Putin is open and up for negotiation? Because, of course, it's all about saving face as well as saving lives.
I think truly both sides here are trying to maneuver around Donald Trump. Neither side wants to pretend that they don't want peace. And that's been the game here for some time. Zelensky was quite wise to actually say, I will only discuss territory in a trilateral meeting with Putin, because he knows that Putin won't meet with him in this fashion. And so therefore he can sort of delay this question of ceding territory. And I think it's been the same for Putin as well. Neither of them want to appear to President Trump that they are not willing to come to the table for peace.
Well, the next meeting is going to be interesting, or if the big one, the trilateral meeting, takes place, and I'm sure we're going to speak again. Audrey, thank you for your time. Stay safe as ever. Audrey McAlpine, American journalist based in Kyiv, with her response and her views on what the people there are telling her in terms of giving away land. Is this how the war in Ukraine ends now? Is that too positive to say, look, we've had a couple of meetings, yeah, Putin nipped over to Alaska, and then all the EU cats, the cool cats from Europe, nipped over for a chat. Zelensky pitched up, all of them got together, they had a vol au vent and a slice of cake, they had a chat, everybody was talking about security. Is this it? Is this how the war is likely to end? 0344 499 1000.
The people who are putting up these Palestinian flags and other flags representing the Muslim communities, which are very close to being in the majority in some of these areas. This is a serious dispute and a break in the civic structure of our country. And it inevitably is going to lead to more protests and maybe increasingly angry and even violent protests.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. This one comes in from Barry. He says, afternoon, Ian, the troops that deployed to Ukraine should be reassured that Stalemate will be right behind them. About 1,500 miles right behind them, says Barry. Thank you for that. Ozzy makes this point. Foreigners and non-Indigenous people have no right to be offended by our national flag. This is the United Kingdom, and the Union Jack is our national flag. Get over it if you're not happy. This country was a happier, healthier, safer, wealthier place when we flew our flag with pride. Our forefathers fought and died for our flag. Any attack on our flag is treason. You know the crazy thing, though? Just to pick up on what Ozzy says, it's not usually foreigners or non-Indigenous people that have the problem. It's usually some half-white lefty sitting in a council building thinking we've got to do all we can to A, stamp out patriotism, and B, make sure we don't offend anyone. And yet the locals are probably going, well, we're not offended by that. It's a bit like when, better not put Christmas lights up. No local ever said that. In areas that are heavily populated with ethnic minority groups, none of those people ever complain about the Christmas tree. It's just other people that do. That's the madness of this whole thing. Let's get back to Ukraine. John's in Sutton. What are we making of this, John? Afternoon to you.
Afternoon, Ian.
What are your thoughts?
What I'd like to see, and what I would like to see, is very, very thoughtful about this. Obviously, it's a very serious situation.
Of course.
I would like to see us in lockstep with the Americans on this. I'd like to see us form part of the backstop rather than the initial security force in Ukraine. That's what they're planning. Because the Franco-German-led European coalition surely would be able to hold up any Russian advance across Ukraine. And it would be like a layered security for Ukraine.
Yeah.
If they did manage to come through, they'd be met with a brick wall of the Brits and the Americans.
But the Americans aren't going to put boots on the ground, though.
No, but they'd be part of the backup.
Got it. Okay. So not literally there, but the threat of being there.
Yes. If the worst came to the worst.
Yeah.
Because they would still be there if a NATO country was invaded, like Estonia or whatever. So would we. But the security...
Yeah, but that's part of the deal, isn't it?
Yeah, because we should be focusing on containing Russia, That's what I think the West should be focused on. And China, for that matter.
Sure.
Them to one side. That's what we should be focused on, containing Russia.
Yeah.
And doing everything we can to stop them from advancing any further west or any further into Ukraine.
So on the back of that, on the back of the Alaska meeting, you know, Putin and Trump, and then what happened yesterday with, you know, God knows how many meetings, Zelensky there, our man there, and all the others there, etc. Do you sense this is how the war in Ukraine is ending?
I think it's the start at the end. But that's what I'm saying. We have to be very careful about how we deal with the Russians on this.
Yeah, of course.
Because they said they don't want it to look like NATO.
Yeah.
And if Britain aren't part of the initial boots on the ground, it's going to look less like NATO.
Yeah, of course.
And more like a European sort of Franco-German-led coalition.
Yeah. We will, we will hopefully, I mean, there'll be some development in the next couple of days because some sort of response on this trilateral meeting is forthcoming. But when, who knows? John, thank you for starting us off. Really appreciate that. Let me get a word from Gary in Leicestershire on Ukraine. What have you got for us, Gary? Afternoon to you.
Hi, mate. You all right?
Yeah, good, thank you. What are your thoughts?
Okay, look, it's an outrageous act of aggression by Putin. Everybody knows that. But there's an old adage, mate, and that is that God is on the side of the big battalions, and Russia have got the big battalions. Ukraine have done a fantastic job of holding the line as best they can. Been very brave, and we've provided lots of weapons. But the reality is, and I hate it. I'm not saying it's the right thing, is the only way this ends is by Ukraine giving up land, giving up the sectors where they're sort of Russian ethnic, I'm afraid. Nobody wants to talk about that, but that's the way it is. And we're going to end up with the best solution will be something that I think you said earlier, which is like Korea. You let them have those bits, and it's terrible and it's awful. But what's the solution? Them chucking weapons at it. Yeah, it's all it's doing is prolonging the slaughter, and Ukraine cannot win. Sorry, they're a smaller country. They're going to lose. So get the best deal you can, and try and move on.
But can they win? I mean, whether it's about winning or is it about concession, and everybody knows that it's got to stop somehow. Is it likely that Putin's going to look at this and go, do you know what, right, I think we can get a deal here, I'm willing to stop, I need that bit of land, and Zelensky says, okay, don't want to do this, but I'm going to do it. That's the kind of almost sixth form interpretation of what's going on.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying it's the only solution that we can end up with. If Ukraine cannot win, what is the solution after that? We're not going to send troops, heaven forbid. I don't even want boots on the ground as peacekeepers, if I'm honest with you.
Well, but, some would say that is the point of having an army, wouldn't they? That, you do have to step into these kind of moments.
Well, I tell you what, let the Germans, the Poles, the Lithuanians, the Estonians, all the countries that are near go first. But we are not the power that we were.
No, we're not.
1,500 miles away.
Well, some would say we might be part of the power. Who knows? Listen, Gary, you raised some really, genuinely urgent points on where this story goes. 0344 499 1000. And that is a contingent to this. British boots on the ground, even as a peacekeeping, sort of peacekeeping force. How do you feel about that? This is on European soil. Not EU, so European soil. Responses on the way. Let's first get the news headlines right here on Talk. The time now is 2 o'clock.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, good afternoon. Welcome back to the home of common sense. So much to get through in this hour, including this, of course, President Zelensky, Donald Trump holding those what are being called promising talks on Ukraine. Trump offering NATO-like security guarantees tied to a $100 billion weapons deal. A potential three-way meeting with Putin, of course, was discussed, but fresh Russian missile strikes did cast a bit of doubt on peace efforts. And now Donald Trump talking about how other countries, including us, are up for boots on the ground. Your thoughts on all of that? Is this how the war in Ukraine ends, though? Also this afternoon, Keir Starmer has backed the display of English and Union flags as councils like Tower Hamlets face a bit of a backlash for removing St George's flags. Critics slammed the double standards as residents defended the flags as symbols of patriotism, but also a frustration over British identity being silenced. Certainly that latter point, I think there's quite a lot in that. What is the protocol around flying a flag? Should you fly it anywhere and everywhere, or should there be limitations just to make them look good? Thoughts on that? And Israel is weighing up a ceasefire hostage deal brokered by Egypt and Qatar, with Hamas apparently softening demands under military pressure. While some Israelis back the deal to save hostages, hardliners warn it could legitimise Hamas. We'll have more on that story as well. 0344 499 1000 is where you will find us. This in from Brian, who says, I'm sick to the back teeth of this country of ours giving way to everyone and everything that is not British. This is the United Kingdom. We should proudly display both the Union Jack and the St George's flag above every government building across the country. Plus, our kids should be taught in school to respect and be proud of our flag and our history and learn the national anthem. Ripping down Union flags is an act of treason. An incompetent Cooper must put a stop to it now. Well, don't hold your breath on that one. This one on what is happening as well in the issue of patriotism. Emma in Barnsley, who's a southerner up north, she says, how has it got to this where we take down our flag in preference to others? We are British. We should be proud of it and able to fly our flag as long as we like. We've lost our boys and people are using the flag as our voice because people are frightened to speak. I really think an important point is, what about the King? What does he think about the flag being taken down for others? If the Queen was alive today, do you really think this would be happening? The whole thing is extreme. I cannot believe I'm even texting this. A lot of people sharing that. Emma, thank you very much indeed for that. Of course, Keir Starmer, we are told, backs the flag, both being flown and the spirit of them. The Union flag and the St George's flag are the ones in question here. Yet councils like Tower Hamlets and in Birmingham removing them under flimsy sort of safety excuses seems to be the standard response now. Tower Hamlets, led by disgraced Mayor Lutfur Rahman, allowed Palestinian flags to stay, although he did take them down last year, while we now know that the St George's flags have got to come down. So what is the deal here? In a moment, we'll speak to Aman Bogle, founding chairman of Global Britain UK. First, Malcolm Farrow, president of the Flag Institute. Good afternoon to you, Malcolm.
Good afternoon.
Many people will not even be familiar with the mighty Flag Institute, which is a crime in itself.
It is. They all ought to be familiar. They all ought to join the Flag Institute. That would be even better.
Indeed. I mean, flags, there's a lot of history to flags, obviously. They do mean something, and invariably, particularly, I think, in this country, the flags, both the collective Union Jack, the Union flag, as well as each country's own flag symbols are really quite beautiful things. I mean, they're quite nice to look at. Quite why anybody would be offended by them is a mystery.
It's a mystery to me as well, because flags are extremely important symbols of common purpose, of unity, of community cohesion, of a sense of oneness, and can appeal to people who are otherwise have little in common. Wherever you come from, whatever your background, whatever your race, religion, culture or creed, your national flag is something you can stand and hold hands with your neighbor beneath, and you're equal under the flag. And we should be proud to fly our flags to show our common purpose together.
Should they be, I mean, is there a flag protocol? Flags often live up a mast. We know that. They sometimes hang from a particular building. Sometimes they're waved at a jubilee or a coronation, that kind of stuff. Should we be mindful of where we put flags, or is it anything goes when it comes to a flag?
Well, up to a point, anything goes. But I mean, common sense and balance needs to be applied to all of this. And a flag needs to be treated with respect and dignity because it reflects and represents the entire nation. So it deserves great respect. If your listeners look on the Flag Institute website, there are guides there as to how best to fly your flag, where to fly it, how to treat it, which order the flag should go in. All that sort of thing is covered on the Flag Institute website.
Yeah.
So there are protocols, and they are there.
So the protocols are there. There's a frustration, I think, for some people putting up flags. It's not just about, wanting a flag up there. It's sort of making a wider point about British identity.
Yes. The fact is that in the past, we were not a very flaggy nation, because in the distant past, we were an homogenous nation. People grew up in the same village and lived there all their lives and never went anywhere and didn't know anyone who didn't look like them or speak like them. But at that time, we exported our flags all over the world. These were the days of the British Empire. That's long gone now. And then it's now become the Commonwealth. And since the Second World War, we have become an extremely diverse nation. So now we do actually need to fly flags to show that we are a united common population with ideas in common. We didn't need to do that in the past, but we do need to do it now. And the example of people who do that so very well are Canada, Australia, and the United States, to name just three. And because they started with diverse populations and had to bring them together to a sense of a common national identity. And now we need to do a bit of that ourselves. So I think the councils in question here in these arguments should use a little bit of consideration and take a nuanced approach to this and work with the communities they represent, because they do represent these communities, work with them to work out how best to address the obvious wish to fly these flags. Sometimes they're flown from lampposts and things like that. Well, I'm not going to sit here and suggest people break the law, obviously, but there's nothing wrong really with flying a flag from a lamppost.
Not really. I mean, there's greater offences. I think we can all. There
are greater offences, and the council could work with the local communities to ensure that this happens properly, because it looks good. It looks great. People can go out in the morning and say, hey, we're all together under these flags. We can all hold hands and move ahead together in unity.
100%. Malcolm, it's been great having you on. Thank you, sir. We will speak again. Malcolm Farrow, president of the Flag Institute. Shouldn't every town hall, just by default, have the country flags outside? You could have the Union flag, you can have the St George's flag in England's case, and you can have the flag or the symbol of your town or county. That would make sense, wouldn't it? Surely. So Kent County Council, for example, would have a Union Jack or Union flag. They'd have the St George's flag, then they'd have the Invicta flag, which is the white horse, which is kind of the Kent symbol, and that would be replicated across the country. That would help solve something. Let's speak to Aman Bogle, founding chairman of Global Britain UK. Good afternoon to you, Aman.
Good afternoon, Ian.
Nice to see you again as well. I mean, this has turned into you're a British Indian and you love the flag. So the idea that this is sort of carved up down ethnic lines is a nonsense, right?
Absolutely. I think it's in fact what we've seen in Tower Hamlets is a real indictment of multiculturalism, which has been foisted on this country under the Blairite orthodoxy of the last 3 decades. I mean, let's be honest, Ian. I mean, for me, as an immigrant, who made Britain his home, for me and millions like me, the Union flag has always served as, a ground root of integration as British. It's the flag which unites us all. acting as a declaration of our love and affinity for Britain. You know, a gesture of respect for our civilizational inheritance. You know, a real nod in awe of the freedoms afforded to us by Britain. You know what I would say, Ian, our glorious Union flag tells a civilizational story of who we are as a great nation, what we value, you know, freedom, liberty, and democracy. You know, we are a force for good and a beacon of hope. You know, I would say, for most British people, the red, white, and blue is a profoundly potent declaration of why we are proud of Britain and what our identity is. And I think that's exactly why it's so disgraceful when local councils tear down Union flags and the Cross of St. George, you know, put up proudly by local people. Yeah. And I think it's clearly proof, if any was needed, of the caustic failures of state-sponsored multiculturalism when a flag of free Palestine or free Kashmir can fly for 6 months and longer. Yep. I think it's about time that we got rid of this whole confused identity of, you know, this wishy-washy nation without borders, you know, a home for everyone but a home of no one. Sure. I think it's about time that we, look, it's our flag and we'll fly it bloody well where we like it.
100%. And the thing is, what's interesting about this conversation, Aman, is it's not even controversial, right? It's a flag. It's a flag of a country. Loads of countries, as our previous guest said, do it really well. Outside government buildings, you will always find those flags. Outside local council offices, you will always find those flags. There seems to be almost an effort by some to either disguise it at best or at worst just get rid of it.
Well, indeed. I mean, look, you land at JFK, New York, you'll be greeted by the Stars and Stripes. I was with a team in Delhi last year for their general elections, and the first thing you see when you enter Delhi airport is a 100-foot high tricolour, Indian tricolour, flying, soaring high in the sky. It unites 1 billion Indians, and the same should be true for our Union flag. It unites us as a nation. It tells the story of who we are and where we want to go. But you know what, Ian, I think when Britain sees local mayors raising foreign flags to celebrate, you know, foreign independence days at British town halls. Yeah. You know, we see hostile crowds of unintegrated third or fourth generation immigrants and our own assortment of, you know, homegrown, Hamas-loving, Pakistan-friendly, you know, these Marxist mugwumps, more at home flying sectarian free Palestine or free Kashmir flags than treating the Union flag as some sort of foreign hostile. I think that then the nation really wants to know, what on earth are you doing here in Britain?
It's a very weird situation, isn't it? And of course, local councils who are so scared that they're going to be accused of an ism or something like that. You know, we've seen this with lots of stories of protocol and things you're not meant to say, and people you can't even refer to a husband and wife now who've got married in case you offend someone in Greenwich, apparently, like anyone cares. But nonetheless, that's the sort of time they have on their hands. These are the very people whose parochial thinking takes us to this very place. Oh, we better get rid of the flag. We might offend someone.
Indeed, Ian. I think the truth is, Ian, I think most people in this country have had enough of this 3 decades of what I call the Blairite orthodoxy, where, you know, patriotism has been besmirched as a dirty word. Nation-first patriots have been maligned by the legacy media and the metropolitan liberal establishment elite as far right, you know. I mean, let's be honest. And let's also not forget, Ian, I think far too many legacy politicos for far too long have turned out to be border-abolishing, Janus-faced plastic patriots who've used our national flag as a mere prop-up prop. Yeah. And I think, look, if we are to protect our great civilizational inheritance, conserve Britain as Britain, I think the flag has a very central role to play in that. And I think it's about time where we stop in its track, this mad self-immolations of the very foundations of our national unity, and that the Union flag. And it's about time, I would say. Look, the bottom line is, you know, this great red, white and blue, Ian, I think let's not let any jumped up left while our town hall busybody tear down our flag in our own country. Look, this is my flag. This is your flag. This is our flag. Yeah. We should be proud to fly it and be a patriot.
It's a fabulously powerful but very simple point. Aman, thank you as ever for your time. Really lovely to have you on again. Aman Bogle, he's the founding chairman of Global Britain UK, speaks as a British Indian. And that's his view. That's about as patriotic as you could get. Let's go to your calls on this. Adam is in Nottingham. What are you making of this, Adam? Afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Well, first of all, I just want to thank Talk Radio, all of you there, Julie, everyone. for reuniting my patriotism. I got so angry, upset yesterday over the news reports about council taking down the flag that I actually went out and bought the British flag, and I've ordered I put that right outside my house, big and bright, right outside my house.
Good man.
And I had loads of people cheering me, oh, well done, I'm doing like that. I go, yes, let them come and try and take it down because it's on my property.
100%. 100%.
Really defined. And I just want to say, again, thank you. But you was asking what you should do about the flags. I mean, to me, it's so simple. It's just like we're in Britain. If you're in America, there should be no dispute.
Should we have them in certain places? Because flags do look great when they're kind of displayed correctly, right? I mentioned like down the Mall in London, you know, where they have this lovely bit of symmetry of flags all the way down to the palace, that kind of thing. So do we want them in, or can they just be anywhere? You know, you don't want to super glue one onto the front window of Primark because that would look a bit messy.
No, you don't want, like your guest said, you want to be respectful because it is a respectful flag.
100%.
It helped build the world. Yeah. Not everything was our finest hour, but then what country has
all the
finest hours? We all have our problems.
Of course
Everyone does. And I very much appreciate and I love the flag. And I personally think that there should be no talk. If you want to hang your flag, as long as it's done safely and respectfully, hang the flag. And there should be oh, do we need permission? No, none of that. I think, other than state visits and other things, you know, President of Australia comes down and visits, fly the Australia flag, you know, everything. But I think that when it comes to things like other countries or stuff that if you want to put that on your thing, then I think that needs permission if it's not our country flag.
There it is.
Not that we'll deny permission. It's just that personally, that stuff should be had the magnifying glass and not the English flag because we're in England. If we weren't in England,
spot on.
I would expect maybe to ask permission to fly the English flag. Yeah,
if you were somewhere else, then it might be understandable. But listen, Adam, you make a great. I love the passion as well, and well done on buying the flag. And thank you for that. That's Adam in Nottingham. It's interesting, is that some of the reasonings that local authority have given is that it's health and safety. I don't know. Has anybody ever been killed or damaged by a flag? I mean, a flagpole, yeah, I mean, if one of those suckers fell on your head, you'd be a goner, right? Especially the big ones. But a flag, you go on Amazon, you can buy these flags. You can buy a fairly substantially sized one. They're sort of very flimsy because it's a flag. I can't imagine what kind of injury you might get. Unless one landed on your head and you couldn't see where you were momentarily, and you turned around and then walked into a taxi or something. Is there any other in unusual injuries? Flag injuries. I don't think there is such data on that stuff. 0344 499 1000. And Pete says, afternoon, Ian, regarding flags, it should be made law. All government buildings fly 3 flags, the Union flag, the country flag, and the county flag. Yeah, what's wrong with that? Who is the person that's going to go, I'm very offended by that? The Gordon Brown flag rule. Do you remember the Gordon Brown flag rule announced in June 2007 was a policy that mandated the Union flag to be flown daily from the flagpole at 10 Downing Street. I mean, was it not there before? And asked other government buildings to follow suit, aiming to foster a stronger sense of British identity. This ended a previous policy where the flag's flying was restricted to specific national days and royal occasions. And is the flag always outside Downing Street now? I can't remember trying to think about it. But the idea that it wasn't up till Gordon Brown did it, of all people, is an utter bloody mystery, frankly. 0344 499 1000. We'll be back with more of your calls coming next on Talk.
the people who are putting up these Palestinian flags and other flags representing the Muslim communities, which are very close to being in the majority in some of these areas. This is a serious dispute and a break in the civic structure of our country. And it inevitably is going to lead to more protests and maybe increasingly angry and even violent protests.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 03444991000. Back to issues on Ukraine. This comes from Brian. It's the beginning of stage 2 for Putin. He will see any negotiated agreement as a win-win. He'll go away for a few years, rebuild his military and come back for another go and another slice of land. If not from Ukraine, then possibly Estonia. Either way, Putin is not finished by a long shot on his attempt to rebuild the USSR. Yeah, well, that's precisely, it seems. I haven't been told anything to the contrary by those that know. That's exactly where it's at. Mark says, your guy is talking nonsense, pure slop and Western propaganda. That was reference Roland Oliphant, who's a journalist that's worked, one of the leading experts in that world of what's gone on in the region. Mark G suggests he knows more than Roland, and I don't say that facetiously, Mark. It would be good to get you on together and do a little debate on what's happening. And of course, we are talking about Russia here, which is a dictatorial, pretty grim state of affairs, even on a good day. You know, try talking about Russian propaganda in Red Square out loud, or stick it on a billboard. See how far you get. You'll have your brains caved in within about half an hour. Back to your calls. This will be Andrew in Lanarkshire on flag lunacy. Andrew, afternoon to you.
Afternoon, Ian. Thanks for having me on.
It's a pleasure. What are you thinking on this? By the way, can I just... I'm sure Scotland does slightly better with flags.
Well, I've lived through the last about 9-10 years of flag division in this country, and where half the country thinks you're a lunatic anyway for flying a Union Jack. But no, it drives you to despair that I travel and I go to lots of different countries, and I've never been to a single country where a country has been so ashamed of their own flag. And it just, I don't know where it's all come from, and there's obviously maybe a few reasons for that, but in no other country, as I think your last guest said, you go to the States and it's wall to wall, you know, pride in our country, and the stars and stripes are there, and we just don't, we seem to apologise for it, and I've never understood it. And you know, personally I love coming down to London. You think you're actually coming to a place that's actually proud of some of its heritage, because you go down Bond Street, Regent Street, Oxford Street.
Yeah, you do see some flags knocking around there, and so it's not quite true that we don't fly them at all, but it's just that it shouldn't be controversial for someone to suggest they get put on poles and flown elsewhere. Like, you know, what's weird about a council building having a flag outside? You almost think it was expected.
No, and I think councils have a lot to answer for in terms of some of the local representatives are probably not fit for purpose, because they're going in with a complete agenda instead of ruling fairly for all, as most politicians should do.
Yeah.
And I think we get that up here as well as down south. But I feel you kind of feel, certainly down where you are, and to an extent up here a bit, you feel as if there's a kind of a movement growing to restore a bit of pride in the country.
Yeah, I was just trying. I think so. What you see, the difference I feel whenever I go to Scotland, I do feel in Scotland that I'm in Scotland. I genuinely, not just because obviously you see the word Scotland written all over the place, but there is I sense there's a more patriotic vibe going on. And if you went to the Lanarkshire Council headquarters, where's that, Hamilton or somewhere, to the HQ. Would there be a flag flying out there? Would it be the Scottish flag and the Union flag, or would there be nothing at all?
Yeah, probably in some of the councils you're likely to have, well, maybe a saltire. You might get a Ukrainian flag,
or a Ukrainian flag. Yeah, you might get a Palestinian one as well on a good day.
Well, absolutely, and it gets to political. I mean, what probably annoys a lot of unionists like myself, who are very proud to be British, is the idea that I'm not actually a proud Scot as well. And, it's as if, the last 10 years has taken, that's a different tangent, but it's kind of taken our kind of nationality away from us as well. And that you're saying, well, if you like the Union Jack and you like Britain, then you can't be a proud Scot. And that's obviously just arrogant nonsense.
Yes, where does that thinking come from? But people do have that view.
I think there's people up here, and you just have to look online. There's people that actually are British born through and through, and they hate their own country. And I don't know where it stems from, but Scotland, obviously, a lot of it's slightly different in that it stems from, if you want to leave, you're never going to be British. So
yeah.
But I think it's the backlash is growing in terms of, in a nice way. I mean, not in a violent way, but
no, of course.
I think people are waking up to this a bit more.
I think so. It feels that there is a waking up, and I just hope that Keir Starmer has said through his spokesman that he supports the flag, but that falls slightly short of whether he supports people's actions to try and display it more. Andrew, you've been fabulous. Thank you very much indeed for that. Nikki says, I'm an older white English woman. Why are we putting messages through from old white women? This is not very diverse of our station, is it? Old white women. Nikki Inkett. Finn just said in my ear, I don't have many women that are interested in me. Oh, mate. Anyway, I'm going to make an exception to the rule, because we did have a little bit of a ban on old white women for a while, but we've lifted the ban. Can you be racist against yourself? I don't know. Can you be that? Well, you can't. Yeah, you kind of can, can't you? But if you can jape about your own race and your own kind of foibles and identificationable elements to your... Nonetheless, shall I just read Nikki's text? Because she's sent this in, and here I am analysing her race. Anyway, old whitey Nikki from Kent says, I'm an older white woman, and the sight of the St George's flag makes me feel uneasy and slightly queasy. See, I was right all along on this one. To me, it still carries associations with aggression, xenophobia, and far-right politics, and the former BNP and EDF, a feeling I don't experience when I see the Union flag. Now, that is interesting, because it was kind of hijacked a little bit. And I've got some agreement with my white friend Nikki in Kent, because I do sense that there is some of the hotel protests, and by the way, we're going to get a ruling on the Epping Hotel shortly. We'll bring it to you here first on Talk. I do think it becomes a little bit counterproductive. So if you turn up at those protests and you're draped in a St George's flag and you've got your face and sometimes your buttocks painted as the St George's flag, I sense I get the reason, and the reason in an ideal world would be totally fine. But bearing in mind what you're battling against, the idea that anyone who turns up outside a hotel is a mad racist, if you overdo it on the patriotism, someone like Nikki, who's just texted in, is likely to kind of have that view, as distinct from the 99% of the others that aren't dressed in that. So it's a bit of I'm a bit torn on it, because I get it, but I do wonder if it's a bit counterproductive in that context. We are due the Epping Hotel decision as to whether the local authority are able to say, no, this is not a place we're going to house migrants. That's coming up shortly. We'll bring it to you when it does. More from you on the way. 0344 499 1000.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Blackpool says, will they stop the red arrows displaying red, white and blue smoke trails? That's interesting, isn't it? If the red arrow suddenly belched out a Palestinian flag as it went over the palace on a special day. Great show today, says Ivan in Dorset. The only H&S flag risk, health and safety flag risk I can think of, is if a flag came down on top of a cyclist, motorcyclist or a car windscreen. So it's not an unreasonable point that could happen, I suppose. Let's move to what is happening, and we've been talking a lot about Ukraine. Of course, it's not the only part of the world where there are issues surrounding warfare. A ceasefire hostage release deal has been proposed to Israel. This was brokered by Egypt and Qatar, with Hamas moderating some demands under military pressure. Netanyahu now needs to decide if he will accept the partial agreement, which could save lives in the short term, but risk undermining its broader strategic aims. Let's get a word on this from Jonathan Sacerdoti, journalist and broadcaster. Jonathan, good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon.
These sort of ceasefire proposals do sort of come and go from time to time. Does this one carry more authenticity or possibility than others?
Well, the official Israeli position is at the moment that Israel is consistent and hasn't changed its position, that it wants and demands the release of all 50 hostages in accordance with the principles set by the cabinet for ending the war. But of course, there has been that news that Hamas apparently accepted the proposal that was put to them by the Egyptians and the Qataris, and that was for something much more like the Witkoff plan, which Steve Witkoff had devised and been negotiating back in July, before Britain and 25 other countries scuppered those negotiations altogether by effectively promising the Palestinians everything they wanted without any concessions, and that stalled those negotiations. So since Israel then said that it was planning to occupy the Gaza Strip and to conquer Gaza City, of course a chorus of criticism from around the world, but that appears to have unstuck the negotiations, and that caused Hamas to go back to discussing the possibility of a ceasefire and releasing some of the hostages. So in a sense, some are saying that that does prove what Israel has been saying all along, that it's only military pressure or even the threat of military pressure increasing which is going to force Hamas to do anything. They're not in the business of making deals, sticking to deals or releasing hostages unless they get something out of it.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? Obviously, we've talked a lot about Ukraine in the last couple of days and on the show earlier as well, Jonathan. There is a sort of an inevitable synergy, isn't there, between all of these areas of war where unpalatable things are proposed. Conceding land to Putin. Why would anyone concede land to someone who'd invaded you? And similarly with this, the position that Israel will forever be stuck with is, do you negotiate with a terrorist organisation?
That's right, and of course Israel has always negotiated with terrorist organisations because it's a country which actually prioritises and considers it very important to release those who've been kidnapped. In the past it's predominantly been soldiers, but actually in this case it's extraordinary, not just because of the number of people being so high, but because so many of them were civilians. I mean, don't forget that these vile jihadist barbarians actually kidnapped a baby, they kidnapped a Holocaust survivor, so everything from under 1 year old to over 80 years old. Many of those people were actually saved. They were exchanged for Palestinians who were in prison in Israel, many of them on life sentences for terrorist suicide bombings or involvement in suicide bombings and other terrorism. So this has been a very hard thing for Israel to do, this kind of negotiation, but unfortunately it's a country that has a lot of experience of that, so they do tend to know the enemy when they're engaging in these kind of discussions.
What is your assessment then as to where this is likely to go? What's your gut telling you on this, Jonathan, where we might be in 7 days' time on this proposal?
Well, I can't really say, and I don't think any of us can. We have to wait and see, and that's because Hamas, even when they say they're going to do something like this, often even only say that to stall for time. If that could stop Israel conquering Gaza or starting its operations in Gaza City, then that might be one of the reasons they're doing that. They may then drag their feet, change their mind a bit, add some new conditions and things like that. And at the same time, just because the negotiating arm of Hamas, that is to say those who are not in Gaza, living lives of luxury in Qatar, being put up there by the Qataris, if they agree to something, it doesn't necessarily mean that the Palestinian terrorists on the ground in Gaza are going to actually comply with the deal that's made. So there's many things that could go wrong, even from this point of hearing these rumours. And indeed, Israel is under a lot of pressure from both sides. On the one side, there are those people who've been protesting in the streets, demanding that really at any cost, Israel does any deal it can to save as many hostages as possible, even effectively if that means surrender. And on the other side, Benjamin Netanyahu has to contend with groups like the Tikva Family Forum, families of hostages who are on the other side of that debate, and people within his own coalition who say, no, keep going, absolute victory is the only way to win this war, and if that means that we risk some of those hostages' lives, then so be it. So very difficult decision for him to make.
Jonathan, thank you for your time, sir. Really appreciate that. Jonathan Socio-political broadcaster and journalist. Thank you to him. That's that phrase Gordian knot, isn't it, of which kind of slightly underplays the severity of it, but you take the point. Is there ever an end to this one, in the same way as we debate this one on Ukraine as well, on that very issue? Matt's in Cheshire. What are you thinking, Matt? Are we on the final run now? Is this the beginning of the end of the war?
Good afternoon, Ian.
Afternoon.
I genuinely hope so. Something has never sat right with me with this war from the very beginning. It dovetailed perfectly with the end of COVID, and it's been used as the excuse for every bill in Britain going up for the last 3 years. As for the meeting yesterday, all those people have egged Zelensky on for the last 3 years, all of them, thrown money at him, offered to give him everything. And apart from actual military support, and Ukraine were never going to win, as one of your previous callers said earlier, yet all those tired old faces round the table yesterday made Trump look like a brilliant geopolitical strategist yet again. And they're all now kissing his backside for a little piece of the, I was there at the peace talks at the end. And let's just forget about the fact that I've been whipping Zelensky all the way along. And none of us were really ever saying to him, listen, do you really think you should be doing this? You know, you're probably not going to win. And
what was he meant to do, though, Matt? Because I wrestle with this one as well. But, you know, his country is invaded and he's back, and it's on European soil. So there is a European interest, obviously, in all of this. We know the last time that happened in any significant way, what went on to rewrite the shape of history. He couldn't have sat back and done nothing, could he?
Well, there's a lot of left-wing hawkish dribble about this. He's took 3.5 years to get 1/6 of the way into Ukraine. So the idea that he's going to waltz through Europe in a matter of days, you know, and
that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen.
It was never going to happen. But apparently Ukraine.
But if he waltzed into a NATO country, then it might.
The idea that Germany, France, Britain, and every other sort of Poland are all just going to roll over like we're the Belize or something like that. It's just absolute insanity. One, Russia has never invaded Britain in its history. So the idea that they're going to come gunning for us, it's just madness here. And I'm sure in the future things will come out about this war that we don't know now. And I hope it ends. I hope everyone's bills go down. I hope we have to stop talking about death and horror, and we can go back to a 90s style world where everyone was nice and civilized and we were all happy.
Yeah, Sorry, I thought you were going to carry on then for a second, Matt. I thought you had a big old list. But yes, no, it's as simple as that. Wouldn't it be nice? Well, did those days... I often wonder about that. I wonder what... You look at images, every now and again you will have seen this online. Somebody posts a picture of, I don't know, Trafalgar Square in 1950. And, the first thing that hits you is the lack of people around. The second thing that hits you is that no one's fat. The third thing that hits you is the lack of traffic. And you look at all of that. And the fourth thing is that, men are wearing hats and, stuff like that. And it looks like sort of simple, happier times. And no one had a phone and no one was wanging on social media about why everything's wrong. And but I wonder what they were really like those times.
Obviously, there were problems, but there weren't as many as there were today. And technology helps to create fear, and it helps to spread horrible messages. 24 news cycles help to make people neurotic about the future. And your show manages, on all the shows on Talk, it manages to talk about subjects without it being morose and horrible.
Yeah.
Everyone has a laugh to get all the stuff off the chest, and then everyone feels better. But the mainstream legacy media, they need these wars. They want it. They want the content for their news cycle. And in turn, in the last 20 years, everyone's... And then you add the internet and smartphones on top of that. Everybody just thinks everything's constantly negative. And it's just so easy to make people believe things that previously people would have just gone, what a load of rubbish.
Yeah, that's very true. We do live in strange times, though, don't we? I don't think there's any doubt. I think objectively, this is a really interesting era. This is almost there's a sort of a social industrial revolution going on, in addition to all the kind of technology and innovation and digital ID and our relationship with our government, our lack of trust with our government, but the way we as humans do business, our lack of trust, which largely, I think, or to a great extent came from COVID, but other elements too that have built up over the years, but maybe it stayed a bit dormant, but COVID really kind of reinvigorated that sense of, what do these people do that we vote for? And then, of course, we all have the microphone, because social media has given everybody a voice like never before. Matt, I'm going to move on for time, no other reason. Thank you for that, as ever. Matt in Cheshire, the social revolution, but not in a sense of, the kind of liberation of the 60s or anything like that. Something is happening, I swear, with our minds and our thoughts and our disposition as human beings on planet Earth, and where the hell we go with it, and what do we do, and what's worth it, what's not worth it, etc. This comes from Paul in Fife, who says, if this government truly believes in this country, then it will make it a criminal offence to damage or remove the Union flag and indeed the English cross of St George in England if they are not presenting an obstruction. They won't, of course, but if I were to remove or damage a Palestinian flag or a Pakistan flag or a flag of India, I would be arrested unless this government fully backs this country, the British people's British values. We will have civil war. Well, Keir Starmer says he does back it. He absolutely backs it, but he hasn't specifically said what he thinks of individuals shinning up lampposts, sticking a flag on it. He's just said that he supports the right to fly a flag and the symbolism of the flag. Very patriotic, the spokesman said, is our Keir Starmer. Doesn't really feel like that very much, does it? In fact, some might say it's arrant BS, but hey, it's not for me to say. Lots still to come. More of your calls on the way. 0344 499 1000. Voice of Doom, day 15 is coming around. 16, is it? Day 16 is coming around the corner in a couple of moments' time. And talking of winning, what about this? Giving you the chance to win £5,000 spending money, plus tickets to watch American football when it returns to Wembley this October. The Los Angeles Rams take on the Jacksonville Jaguars in this autumn, and we're giving you the chance to win 6 seats in a private box, the full hospitality, everything, plus £5,000. I mean, this is like big stuff. You want to win this? Have a listen to this, and here's the full details on how you can enter.
18 plus, UK excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win, text the word Wembley to 83338 and you're in the draw. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission or enter for free by calling 0330 880 3338. All entries must be received by 25th August at 11 p.m. This is a TalkSport limited promotion run on TalkSport, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. See TalkSport.com for terms and conditions.
So where do we get started? They take more territory, and again our response is, okay.
Well, what do you think we should do?
You've been bad again.
Well, what would
we'll
you
let
suggest?
You
All right, what's your remedy then? If we declare war on them, have World War III? Is that what you want to do?
Well, ultimately, if Russia is gonna keep invading people, then yes.
Yes. Well, you want World War III. Dan Hodges wants World War III. Page one, tomorrow morning, Daily Mail. Let's have World War III. Are you going to send your kids out to fight for you?
Well, Mike.
Oh, you've gone mad, Dan.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Ali makes a reasonable point. He says, let's be fair, Ian, there is a very real health and safety risk presented to members of Birmingham City Council from these flags, pertaining particularly to where I would stick one if I was ever unfortunate enough to meet one of these people. It's a very good point. Yeah, I think we all share a bit of that as well. And Colin in Gwent says probably what the council mean about removing the Union flag and health and safety is what the owner of the flag might do to the council worker for taking it down. That's a good point. And the answer to that, of course, is don't take it down, I guess. Back to your calls in just a second. Let's go to the Voice of Doom. This is day 16. This has been running for 15 days. This is the 16th day. It's very simple. The mechanism's really simple. All you've got to do is identify who the voice is. So it's a mystery voice, but it's a politician. Always a politician. We'll play you the voice. If you think, you know, remember this goes back to the probably the 60s, 70s, I don't know. It's an old voice, so don't think Ian Duncan Smith or Douglas Hurd or someone like that. Have a listen to the voice. Here it is.
I certainly have things to say.
He certainly has things to say. If you think you know who that is and you want to have a crack at this, don't phone, but you can message 87222 if you fancy taking part. We've got no glorious prizes on this one. Here's the voice again.
I certainly have things to say.
And again.
I certainly have things to say.
Now, if we get a correct answer, we shall spill the beans after the news at 3 o'clock. If we don't, it rolls over to tomorrow, which I suspect it will. It's a real tough one, this. It's a proper tough one. One more listen.
I certainly have things to say.
87222. Hopefully the answer comes up after the news at 3. Back to your calls on that issue of flags. Matthew is in Cheshire. Matthew, how are you doing?
Hi, Ian. Great show. Yeah, I thought I'd call in first time. I'm an ex-Welsh Guardsman, veteran. the symbolism of flying the flag, it dates back to, the truth in the colour originates from the Crimean War, where the Union flag was streaked in front of all the lines, in front of the soldiers at the end of the day.
All right,
and
okay.
It was placed in the regimental headquarters where it could be seen. And the protection of the Union flag and the regimental colours was the be-all and the end-all. If you lost the flag, you'd lost the battle. And, I could take you back. The last time I remember the flying of the Union Jack, you mostly remember yourself, was when the Paras and the Marines retook Port Stanley, and the famous words were said.
Yep.
The Union flag now flies over the port of Stanley to the whole of the nation.
Yeah, of course.
And I think that has been lost, and it's been diluted now. It's a British man's right to fly the Union flag. I do believe, like the Georgia Cross, that might have been people looking at it as football hooliganism and all that. So it does been diluted, but the Union flag is very symbolic. The laying of the colours is a very religious process. I've been looking up to, we presented the new colours, the Queen of Windsor Castle.
Wow.
And you take the old colours away because it has all the battle honours.
Yep.
On it, and the old colour gets taken away and the new colour gets blessed in front of the King or the Queen, and then the old colour then gets laid to rest in a chapel. And you'll go to many churches and you'll see all the old regimental colours hanging, and they're the old colours that have been laid to rest. And that is a sacred process it's a religious process, a Christianity process of putting the colours to rest. So
that's interesting.
It's not just about flying the flag. It's about, a lot of people lost their lives to protect our Union flag.
Yeah, 100%.
Afghanistan. And people should remember that, and we don't get taught that anymore.
Quite strange, isn't it? The lack of history. You've just brilliantly, Matthew, explained an awful lot in that, and I think many people, including myself, would have had no idea of the other intricacies of the history of our flag. You've been brilliant, Matthew. Thank you very much indeed for that. Let's go to Carl in Liverpool. How are you doing, Carl?
Hi, Ian, you're all right. Good afternoon.
Yeah, afternoon to you. What are your thoughts on flags?
Oh, well, as a veteran, I'm very proud of the flags. I think every household, every political building, train station, bus station should fly the flags of this country. It's our country, and like the last caller said, it's being diluted. But I think it's also being diluted in that we've given into other countries that aren't here, but their flags are flown here, and have become more important than our own because of, and mainly I think probably because of politicians have gone along with it as well, and there's not been a lot of patriotism from them. I've also bought myself a St. George's flag today, and I'm just waiting on a pole, so that'll be put up on my house. And there's a lot of that going on where I'm from. Quite a lot of ex-veterans are going up and down roads, putting up St. George's and Union Jacks.
What do you sense? I haven't been to Liverpool for in the last year I've been to Liverpool. I was trying to imagine flags in Liverpool. Do they appear, like on the Liver building or whatever? There's a big flag there. I think that's just the Liver bird, isn't it? Not the...
You've got the Liver birds on top of the building, but I'm not too sure if there's any flags flown around there anymore. To be honest, Ian, I tried to stay away from the city centre. It's not really the greatest of places.
Isn't that funny? We all say that about our own neck of the woods these days.
Yeah, and it's sad, isn't it, really? Because
really sad,
yeah.
I tend not to go, into the town centre, or the city centre, whatever it is. Yeah, that's bizarre, because it would have been the very opposite a few years ago.
Yeah, but going back to the flag, I think everyone should have a flag. This country's amazing. It is such an amazing country, and the people from all over this place are just fantastic people. And the people of this country, the taxpayers who do no wrong, we're the ones who are on the receiving end of all the bad news. Everything that goes wrong, it's all our fault. Yeah. We're made to feel racist in our own country. We're not allowed to voice our opinions. We're not allowed to fly our flags. Councils are removing flags. It just seems that there's an attack against the British people. Never mind if you're white, just against British people, and our heritage, our culture, our way of life is under threat, and it's gone as far as the flag. Yeah. It's just ridiculous. It's getting to a point where, there's been a lot of speak about people talking about civil war. I think it's coming. I think there's something right round the corner, and it's not too far away. You see it. If you look on Twitter, there's videos of everyone gathering together. There's London, you had West Ham, Tottenham, Chelsea and Arsenal fans going on marches together. That, I don't know when that was last done.
It's a good point.
I think there's a lot of people now across the country that have just had enough, and the flag is just the latest in a long line of attacks on our way of life.
Well, that's the point, isn't it? It's not just about the flag. It's about something more. There's a sense it's about something a little more than just the flag. Carl, again, excellent call. Thank you, mate, for that. Really appreciate talking. And I do find that fascinating, what he just said there about, not going into the city centre. I hear that a lot from town centres to cities, so I don't tend not to go in. And these would have been the thriving epicentres of life in any region, right? Go into the city centre, the town centre. And I know people have often swerved busy towns and high streets and the like because of the amount of people. I get that. But when you sense that there's nothing there, that's quite sad, of the changing face of our kind of town and city-based infrastructure. 0344 499 1000. Back on the flag issue. What is or should be the rules when it comes to flags? Where you should be able to fly them, how they should be displayed, does there need to, so that we're all clear on this and we don't have any half-witted councils going, no, you can't do it because of this. If the councils play ball and went, yeah, we're going to load this place with union flags because it's the town hall. Now, you're not going to have one every 3 metres in every town. That'd be a bit weird, right? But just something so you can go, oh, yeah, this is the flag of this country or of this county, whatever it happens. What's the protocol on that, or what should the protocol be? Also coming up on the other side of the news, that decision from Epping Council. Hopefully we'll get that. And the voice of doom, here it is.
I certainly have things to say.
Lines are open. Here's the news.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed the Afternoon Empire. It is indeed the home of common sense. Lots to get through in this section. We'll continue to take your calls and comments on what happened in the White House yesterday. That was a big, very confusing, curious farrago of politicos sat around debating how to end the war in Ukraine. Is this how the war ends? Did you sense this is the beginning of the end, to coin that phrase? Zelensky and Trump holding what they call promising talks. Trump offering NATO-like security guarantees. It was tied to a $100 billion weapons deal as well, and that potential for the big three-way meeting between Putin, Zelensky and Donald Trump. Details on that and your comments too. Also, Sir Keir Starmer has backed the display of English and Union flags as councils like Tower Hamlets faced a bit of a backlash for removing them. Critics slammed the double standards as residents defended the flag as symbols not just of patriotism, but frustration over British identity being silenced. And that, I think, is more key than anything to this debate. And millions face travel chaos this August bank holiday weekend, with rail strikes halting services and heavy road congestion expected, especially around the M5. Travellers are urged to plan ahead and avoid Saturday travel where possible. More on that as well. We get that story I think I've read that headline out around about this time in August every single year for 20 years. More on that as well. Lots to get through here. 0344 499 1000. Let's do the voice of doom. Have we got a winner? Remember, this is the mystery voice, but it's a political mystery voice. I mean, some programmes around the dial do offer sort of fairly substantial mystery voice things, but this one is dedicated to politics and politics only. So who is this?
I certainly have things to say.
Have we got a winner? It's gone on for 15 days so far. This is day 16. These are some of the guesses. John Stonehouse, Dennis Healy, Cecil Parkinson, Keith Joseph, Alec Douglas. No, none of those. Harold Wilson, no. Norman St. John Stevens, no. Jeremy Thorpe, it is not. Malcolm Rifkind, no. David Amos, the late David Amos, way earlier than David's time in Parliament. No, not him either. In fact, we don't have a winner. What a surprise. It rolls over to tomorrow, day 16. In fact, I'm not here tomorrow. Philip Ingram is here tomorrow, actually filling in. It'll be great. Philip, of course, is a regular with Julia, at least once a week on the programme. He sometimes pops up with us as well. A great, solid military voice with a lot of big views outside of his own sphere of expertise as well. Philip Ingram sitting in tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock. Now, let's move to this story. Epping Council is due to find out if it's been successful in blocking asylum seekers from being housed at the Bell Hotel in Essex. This comes, of course, after a series of protests in response to a migrant at the Bell Hotel being charged with sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl. There's all sorts of other insinuations as well around what is going on there. The High Court is ruling on this as to whether Epping Council can block the use of that hotel. Let's speak with Holly Whitbread, Conservative councillor for Epping West and Rural, joins us now. Holly, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Nice to have you with us. We were rather hoping by this stage we would have got the response of that. They did say sort of around about 2:30. It's only just gone 3, so it may come in as we are speaking. But just give us the sort of story behind this. I just outlined some of it there, but the real sense of feeling that this hotel should not be for this use, and not just because it's not really the use of a local hotel, but also there are some genuine concerns about safety.
So the council have consistently been against the use of the Bell Hotel for asylum processing. It was closed under the last government, open for a prolonged period of time, and as a council we opposed it then. This government reopened the hotel in about April this year without any consultation. They just told us it was reopening, and this time it was for all males. So as you can imagine, from the council's perspective, we've constantly been putting in opposition and doing what we can behind the scenes to put pressure on the Home Office to close it. Since that point, we've had a number of incidents with residents within the hotel. We had an alleged arson, an alleged sexual assault on a schoolgirl, which you referred to, and actually most recently there was an incident between two of the residents of the hotel. And I think the big issue here, and one of the biggest reasons we're opposing it, we just don't know who's in there. It's steps away from a local school, from local houses, from a local care home. And that's why we've taken this legal action today, which is actually an interim injunction against the hotel's owners. But I have been watching the live stream of the court this afternoon, and unfortunately, the Home Secretary has intervened in the case, which actually shows the government's continued contempt for my community in Epping, where I've lived my whole life, and for the council and for the people locally. The Home Office have consistently ignored us, and it looks like now they're going to continue to ignore our very real concerns.
So the Home Office have intervened. So what does that mean in reality? Does that mean this, although the decision hasn't officially been announced, does it mean that it's all but been announced, the fact that she's intervened?
We don't know. So the judge is still ongoing and considering what that means. I think, what it shows is, the government have continually talked about the crisis with asylum seekers or illegal immigration. And what I don't like about it, I think part of the Home Secretary's kind of intervention was like, well, where else are they going to go, the people in this hotel? At the end of the day, we're standing up for our community in Epping. Sure. It's not the people of Epping or the council of Epping's job to solve the government's problem on illegal immigration. Our job is to stand up for our community.
And the feeling of this, of course, has been quite strong. And, we've seen protests outside the hotels. These have been, from what I can gather, these have been very peaceful protests. This is not some kind of mad right-wing renter mob that's shown up to throw bricks at police officers. We're talking about concerned mothers and people like that. The elderly turning up who've never been to a protest in their life. This really has sort of changed the face of what people feel strongly about and the kind of people that will show up to make their points known.
I think that's true. The majority of the protests have been peaceful, and the majority of the people on there are local people. There are people who have used the protests to make political messages both on the left and the right. But when I talk to people in Epping, and as I say, I've lived in the town my whole life, represented it on the council for 10 years, the common message is they want the hotel closed, and some people choose to attend the protest to make that message. Some people don't like the disruption. They just want their life to go back to normal. Yep. And really, as a community, we shouldn't have to be fighting these battles or living with this disruption. We should just be, the Home Office should listen, see what's happened, and just get this hotel closed down. I guess one of the sort of grim realities of what you're completely reasonably trying to do is that the Home Office, I would imagine, even if they don't say it out loud, their central argument would be, well, if this case goes through and the judge in the case rules that the local council in Epping are allowed to stop this being the use of that hotel, the Home Office's argument will be, well, where does it go next? Because then every local authority is going to try and do the same thing. It would set for the government an unworkable precedent, would be their point. I can see that side from the government, but when the government were elected, they told us they were going to stop the use of hotels. They told us they were going to stop the boats. We're now reaching, is it 50,000 illegal immigrants coming over on the boats the other day. The government really need to get a grip of this issue, and they need to look at another solution, not hotels, for stopping this crisis. Yeah. I understand, the pressures that the Home Office are obviously under, but it's not fair that communities like mine in Epping and across the whole of the UK are having to suffer the consequences of it. It's interesting, we talk about who turns up to protest. Robert Jenrick, of course, the Shadow Justice Secretary, was there as well, and others who've shown their concerns of this. There was another point that came from Mr Jenrick today, which was that he'd claimed that schools in Epping were advising children to avoid migrant hotspots due to safety concerns, with kids reporting discomfort around men outside the hotels. Any intel on that, Holly? I have heard that within the community, and the people within the hotel can obviously roam freely around the town, and they've got nothing to do with their time but sit around. So there have been concerns made about that previously. I don't know about any specific emails which have been sent around schools. But obviously it goes back to this argument. They might be completely innocent, but the concern is we don't know who any of these people are. Yeah. And therefore parents are quite rightly going to be concerned about their children if they're walking home and through the town. Yeah, indeed. While we're talking, and we've been talking a lot about local authorities, Holly, but on a different story about displaying flags. Does Epping Council have a flag outside its building? We do. We proudly fly the Union Jack every day, and we will continue to do so. So no ruling on, you've not been told to take it down by
anybody.
Absolutely not. And if anyone told us to take the flag down, we would not be listening. We're very proud to fly it.
I'm glad to hear it as well. Holly, thank you for your time. Holly Whitbread, who's a Conservative councillor for Epping West and Rural. Thank you to her. We await that judgment. It does look as if this is on, you know, not even a knife edge. You can almost hear the judgment that it would be impossible to implement. We were talking in the last hour, weren't we, about what a weird world we've arrived in, how everything's a bit upside down, a bit strange. Here we have a local authority that's not allowed to stop what they see as a huge problem, a huge issue for many, many reasons around a hotel in their neck of the woods, because the Home Office would be stuffed. If this judge, I mean, it would be, I'd stand to be corrected, we haven't had the judgment yet, but if this judge says, yep, Epping Council have their right to deny the owners of the hotel this use for that hotel. It cannot be used to house migrants. And Essex, Epping Council and others have made lots of reasons. There's obviously the issue of locals' concern, young girls. We mentioned schools there, Robert Jenrick's point. There's that. Social cohesion, where do you want to go? There's loads of reasons, but if the local council won the judgment essentially it's against the government, against the Home Office, ultimately that's really what the upshot is, then you'd have God knows how many local authorities trying to do the same thing, and that I think is going to be arguably the pivotal kind of question mark over all of this. 0344 499 1000. Let's talk to Grace down in London on the flag issue. Afternoon to you, Grace. I know that you're not somebody who goes out an awful lot, but when you do, I know you like to paint your face with a Union flag. Is that right still?
I've not tried that, no.
OK, all right. I'm just checking. You never know.
I think I'd find it difficult because the lines aren't all exactly parallel, so getting the right thickness of the white lines and the red lines and the blue would all be quite complicated, and I'm finicky. So and if you're a bit OCD about this stuff, I don't mean that as an insult, I genuinely mean that because I would be, then obviously the thin white line is thicker on one part of the flag than the other part, isn't it? Exactly, and sometimes people get it the wrong way round.
And people get very upset. If it's flown upside down, there's always somebody that says your flag's upside down. They get very irritated by it.
Yeah, I guess it seems to me that a lot of people are wanting to feel like they're part of a movement that's good and positive. Mm-hmm. And that might be by waving a British flag or a Palestinian flag. Either way, people are doing it partly because they feel like they want to be on the side of a community that's got goodness in it. I know that most people listening to this will think that those waving a Palestinian flag are idiots, but so the reason that some people are doing it, some people, is because they think it's showing humanitarian concern.
Yeah, and I get that as well. It is interesting that some of those people, though, would never think of, the kind of person that might wave a Palestinian flag, and let's assume that they're not all anti-Semites and they genuinely have humanitarian concerns, and we're a democracy, and that all of that is fine. You can send a message to our government, great. But I can't imagine many of those people waving a St George's flag.
Well, no, and this is the thing. I think ultimately flags aren't going to either make things much better, or taking them down isn't going to resolve anything. So if it were the case, and I don't think it is the case, but some people think it's the case, that everyone who waves a British flag is racist. Now, if that were true, and I know it isn't, but if that were true, you wouldn't remove any racism by taking down the flags. And I think that we need
That's a good point.
We need to maybe have more thought about what our actual values and principles are, and about the things that we can do to make society better, rather than being just super tribal. I think people want to think I'm better than those people. Like, someone with a Palestinian flag might think I'm better than those people with a St George's flag, for example, because they're all racist. But actually, I think all of us as human beings are flawed in different ways.
Sure.
And I think about how, the St George's cross, it's a cross because Jesus died on a cross for all of the things that we've all done wrong. So maybe we need to think about how we in ourselves can make society better, instead of just being really tribal, because that's not really helping much.
It's a fair point, Grace. Thank you very much indeed for that. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, if you sort of intellectualise it a bit more, that's exactly it. How do you make the country better? I think people who are, behind, everybody will have their own reasons why they feel really passionately about this flag story. But But ultimately, I think there is a sense of people wanting to retain some Britishness, or in England, some Englishness. Scotland, Scottishness. You take the point. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you feel that your identity is fading and is somehow being diluted, then I don't think it's odd that you might want to address that. And I always say this, when, the sort of the left will be sort of discombobulating at the mere idea that you would wave a flag and sing the national anthem and proud to be British and all the rest of it. But if those same left-wingers were watching some worthy BBC4 documentary about a small country somewhere nestled off the coast of South America that was being subjugated and overrun by tourists and the West and goodness knows what else, and people were moving in and building new houses, then not only would those leftists feel very strongly on behalf of these poor islanders that were losing their identity and their culture, they'd be setting up a crowdfunder for it. They'd go, this is outrageous. Look what's happening to these people, these proud people, just off these islands in South America. Look, the people are moving in and they're going there, and these people are losing their culture. And that's the bit that I kind of scratch my head on a bit. Because we're quite bonkers and inconsistent as human beings, aren't we? Well, that particular contingent are. Miguel is down in London on flags. Miguel, what are you thinking?
Hello, mate. Well, we're named like Miguel. I'm Spanish.
Indeed.
Second generation Spanish.
Okay.
And I've got 3 boys.
Do you still speak the language, though?
Absolutely. But let's not go there just yet.
Well, no, I just wanted to make sure you were keeping it up,
Got 2 boys who are Johnny Army.
Yep.
And one of them, the other said, well, Dad, we're going to have boots on the ground, aren't we, in Ukraine? Yeah, maybe. So we'll be there, yeah? Yeah. What flag do we put up? What flag do we put up when we get there and we need to hold out the forts? Do we put a Palestinian flag or an Indian flag or British flag, or which is the flag we want to follow? But we're going to put our lives down.
Would you not put, if you were fighting out there, you'd put down the flag of the country you're fighting for, right?
So when you invade, what do you do?
Oh, you mean in terms of like the Falklands when they plant a flag?
When Russia takes a certain part of Ukraine.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about like on a military base in.
We are talking about, because I've got 2 boys who are joining the military.
Okay, well that would have a Union Jack on it, wouldn't it?
Right. That's the point. That's the point. So why are we turning away the Union Jack and the St. George's flag and saying, but it's okay when our boys are going to die for the country, and then we put.
That's a good point. And they'd have it on their on their military uniforms as well.
When you said, when has anyone died putting up a flag? Do you want to ask my boys about how many of what they've told me who has died putting a flag up and just got shot in the head in the war zone? That's how important a flag is for the country. That's why it's important, and that's why the Union Jack is important. So when you put a flag up, what you're saying is, this is mine. And when my boys, well, one of them might be changing their mind, but when they go there and Keir Starmer says, boots on the ground, go on there, boys, get in there.
Yeah.
Go on, get in there. Are you going to remember who you put where, what flag you put up, where we're allowed to put flags, and what flags we're proud of? And I'm second generation Spanish, but they want to fight for the UK, for Britain. So that's how important a flag is.
You've taken it right down to its kind of almost its literal level of importance, and to some divisiveness as well, because as you say, you stick a flag up in the wrong place and you could find you got a bullet that you're taking as a result. Miguel, thank you very much indeed for that. It's a really interesting angle on this, but Miguel makes a brilliant point in terms of, I wouldn't use the word sacred, but certainly vital, important, prominent and profound would be reasonable words on this one. This is not just a little bit of rag on the end of a rope. 0344 499 1000. Back with more from you. Coming next on Talk.
take more territory. And again, our response is, OK.
Well, what do you think we should do?
You've been bad again.
Well, what would you
let
suggest?
keep
All right,
winning
what's your remedy then? If we declare war on them, have World War III? Is that what you want to do?
Well, ultimately, if Russia is gonna keep invading people, then yes.
Yes. Well, you want World War III. Dan Hodges wants World War III. Page 1 tomorrow morning, Daily Mail. Let's have World War III. Are you going to send your kids out to fight for you?
Well, Mike.
Oh, you've gone mad, Dan.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Peter in York says, my father was a Royal Marine Commando on the beaches on D-Day. He would be turning in his grave if he could hear about what's happening to our flags. It's a good point. I mean, it is just... it's more than a nonsense. This comes from another councillor, Councillor Carly Mays, Malden Town Council, who says, here in my district in Essex, both Malden District Council and Malden Town Council fly the Union flag always. Have done for many years, and we replace the flag yearly to try and keep it looking good. I like that. Not only is the flag there, but it's a spick and span and shiny one as well. Sarah, thank you very much indeed for... Carly, sorry. Thank you very much indeed for that. Sarah says, if British armed forces are to peacekeep in Ukraine on behalf of NATO, the NATO flag will be flown and their uniforms would have the Union flag on it. Yeah, I guess it would be that, wouldn't it? You used to get the United Nations peacekeeping forces. It came up the other day, didn't it? Somebody mentioned that. That judgment, by the way, Epping Forest District Council will discover in the next 30 minutes if it's been granted a temporary injunction blocking asylum seekers from being housed at the Bell Hotel. We'll bring you that as it happens. If it doesn't come on this show, it will come on Drive with Jeremy Kyle after the news. Back to your calls. Mick is in Bromley. How you doing, Mick?
Good, thank you, Ian, and Bromley is looking resplendent.
I'm glad it is, but is there a Union flag on the side of the Glades? I'm trying to remember now.
No, I don't think there is.
I don't think there. For those who don't know, that's the local shopping centre. It's quite a big shopping centre, of course, and, you know, I think you could get a flag on each doorway there, couldn't you?
You absolutely could, Ian, and I know it was often a source of comedy as a creature of the night.
Indeed, yes. We never stopped talking about the Glade. Apart from when they changed its name to Into. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah, I do, yeah. Much to the chagrin of most
I think
people.
they changed the name of Lakeside to Into as well at the same time. All those... Anyway, that's a whole other story.
It is.
What do you think of this flag thing then, Mick? What's going on?
Well, Ian, here's the thing. And what do you want, the controversial point or the...
Well, let's have a bit of controversy to start off with then.
Well, could it not be deemed racist when one flag is accepted over another?
Yeah, I think it could be. But the councils would say, well, we're not replacing... It's not like we're taking down the Union Jack and put a Japanese one up.
But no, but it's preferable. You know, what I'm saying is it's preferable. Their preferences, you know, in terms of say like allowing the Palestinian flag to fly.
Yeah.
But not the Union flag.
That's a fair point.
Or indeed, you know, the English flag.
Yeah.
And I lived in the States for a while, and as you know, and been a regular visitor there, you know that they're very patriotic.
Yep.
And
can't move for a flag, can you, in the States?
Exactly. But, you know, there were Brits there, Scottish, Welsh, English, of course.
Yeah.
And, you know, you'd see the odd Union flag being flown. However, out of respect for the host nation, it was flown underneath, if you will, or it should be, I would say. So, of course, the only acceptance we would have, especially down there in the capital in London, of course, are your embassies, which are sovereign territories of those respective nations. So, yeah, that would be acceptable.
Yeah.
So, but as to, and you touched upon, well, do we have flags everywhere? No, that would be extreme. And also no flags at all. So we got, there'd be a balance to be had.
There isn't a sense, though, is there? Like you rightly say, when you go to America, they are all over the place. We don't really have that. I'm trying to think of the last time I just randomly saw a flag that kind of wasn't outside a town hall or whatever, or down the Mall or something. And I don't imagine many, when I think of all the high streets I know quite well in my kind of, catchment area that I might sometimes go to, I can't really recall seeing many flags at all.
No, you're right. And I think, I'm, I used to be known as Mick the Brit, but I wear my flag very close to my heart, Ian. I'm not a Johnny Rah-Rah when it comes to that. I wouldn't even dress myself in the flag as such, if you know what I'm saying. But I also think there's a class thing being attached to this as well.
100%. Do you remember when Emily Thornberry, the Labour politician, had a pop at somebody in Rochester for flying the St George's flag?
Yeah.
That was a sneering kind of middle-class take on the kind of people that fly a flag.
Yeah, and just on a tangent here, and I know you like a tangent on the question, just imagine, and I'm going to say his name, just imagine, though, Ian, that, say, Mr. Tommy Robinson, that he actually spoke like Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Mm-hmm.
I think he would probably have a bit more traction, shall we say.
Yeah, I mean, he's a conflicting character for lots of reasons. I mean, but I do think that is arguably one of them. I think that is, I've always said this. There's a clip of him addressing the Oxford Union some years ago, talking about his kind of backstory and how he got to where he is. And it was, I thought it was one of the most powerful things, not just because what he said was, it was his own story, his backstory, why he's formed the views that he has, but the fact that it was a working class guy in that environment. The pressure must have been on. It must have been a bit nerve-wracking. But that's a really good point. I've heard people raise that before, that, your accent can work against you. And I think the same thing, as you rightly said, Mick, with some of the flag issues, that there's a sort of middle-class sneering, a looking down thing on it. Mick, I've got to move because we have overrun. We'll talk to Philippa shortly. Martin in Whitley Bay says, here's one for your viewers. I've got a 3-foot by 5-foot St George's cross hanging sideways next to a Union Jack and my county Northumberland flag. They festoon the walls of my summer house. Not only do they look awesome, it's a cheap and cheerful way of decorating your walls. I'd like to see more flags flying, especially county flags, alongside our national ones. If it makes youngsters curious and ask questions, more the better. That's a great idea, actually. Lob one in your man shed, if nowhere else. Maybe I'll stick one on the roof of the man cave. I could do that too. 0344 499 1000. Still awaiting that Epping District Council verdict on the use of the Bell Hotel in Epping. Details to come. More from you on the way as well. Just gone 3:30. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 25 to 4. What is happening this bank holiday weekend? Well, what usually happens on a bank holiday weekend? A bit of travel chaos on the way. If you're planning to travel on the upcoming August bank holiday, perhaps you should, well, maybe have a rethink or certainly plan ahead. Millions will face road and rail chaos on Monday amid warnings of traffic tailbacks as 16.7 million car trips are expected to be made over the long weekend. Lisa Minow is the travel editor at The Sun, of course. Good afternoon to you, Lisa.
Afternoon.
It's deja vu time, isn't it? Every bank holiday, something goes wrong. Rail strikes this time in addition to what happens on the roads.
That's right, yes. So we've got an extra sort of 6.1 million of us heading out on the roads on top of the normal traffic you would get. So it's going to be extremely busy on the roads. We're looking at perhaps the M20 down in Kent. That's going to be a real pinch point. It's a good idea. Anyone who's looking to head over the channel to make sure they're leaving enough time there. And then the good old M5 over in the west of the country near Bristol, that part from Bristol down to Devon and Cornwall, again, you're going to be seeing really significant queues, anything up to an extra 40 minutes on the road. And the advice really is that whenever you're setting off at any point over the weekend, the earlier you go, the better you're going to have as an experience of a car journey.
Yeah, and that's always the key, isn't it? You know, Liv, I was talking to a fella in our neck of the woods who goes from sort of Sevenoaks to Cornwall, does it in about 3 hours because he leaves at 3 o'clock in the morning. He's a regular traveller down there. He's there by about 6:30, and he's got not only that, he's got the entire day there as well. So it's a win-win.
Exactly. It's always best to either set off very early or very late. So any time sort of the middle of the day is always going to be the difficult one. But if you're thinking about getting onto the railways over the bank holiday weekend, we've got even more problems there. Network Rail obviously will always do some of their really significant engineering projects over the bank holidays because there's less of us commuting. It's 261 different projects, and they're going to impact quite a lot of trains in and out of London King's Cross. The line up to Peterborough will not be running at all, and also from Euston as well there's going to be problems there, so it's always going to be a good idea to check. But I think the major disruption will be this cross-country strike that we're seeing on Saturday, where they're now basically saying do not try to get onto any trains. There will not be any trains, and this is a dispute by train guards who are saying that they want extra money to check electronic tickets.
Right, so extra money to check tickets that don't necessarily need checking. Have I got that right?
It's not so much they don't need checking, but what they're saying is that having to actually check someone's ticket on a mobile phone should require an extra payment to them. Now, I think this comes down to the fact that train guards traditionally have had a 5% commission paid on any tickets they sell when they're on the trains. Now, with the advent of e-tickets, the fact that we can go online ourselves now and buy tickets on our phones, that commission now isn't, there's not as much money coming into the train guards from that. So they're demanding an extra payment for using technology to actually physically get people's tickets.
I never knew they were on a commission for that. So no wonder they rather sell you a ticket than fine you for not having one. So that kind of makes perfect sense. There's another issue as well while you're with us, Lisa. I'm bound to ask you about this. You know, the old jokes of, go back to the British rail days about, the leaves on the track. It's the wrong kind of leaves, and sometimes it's the wrong kind of rain. Now we've got the wrong kind of dryness.
That's right. I mean, we have had a fantastic summer, haven't we? And we had a very, very dry spring. And this has actually really started to impact Network Rail in that what's happening is the sort of clay banks that have been created for the tracks to sit on are drying out. We've had a historically very, very low amount of rainfall this year so far. Now, these banks are drying out because it's so dry. All of the sort of vegetation around it is taking even more moisture out of the air as well. Sorry, my microphone's just fallen over.
That's all right. You're still sounding fine, Lisa. So.
So that's taken even more moisture at the end. What that means is that the tracks are not as stable on those particular areas. And that's had to lead to trains being cut and lots of trains having to be reduced in speed. So we're talking from trains travelling at 85 miles an hour down to 40 miles an hour. And that's impacted trains across the country, but particularly is having an impact on the C2C trains from London to Essex, but also South Western Railways, their trains from Waterloo to Exeter as well. And again, it's going to be a problem that we're going to continue to see should we continue to have this historically low amount of rainfall that we have had this year.
Indeed. Lisa, thank you very much indeed for that. Always good, informative stuff from Lisa Minogue, travel editor over there at The Sun. Leave early, plan ahead, it's the usual stuff, isn't it? You know, if you're going to leave at midday to do a very busy journey, long journey on a busy motorway, then you might get scuppered. Stand by for that. It's interesting that everybody's talking about the wonderful summer we've had. Am I the only one that thinks we haven't had a wonderful summer? We've had some really hot days, but they've been so inconsistent that, like today and for about the last week or so, Sunday turned out to be all right, but you almost never know. You wake up and go, it's a bit cloudy, and then about 2:30, it's glorious. You think, oh, great, if I'd known that, I'd have to plan something. That's the kind of summer we've had. So I reckon we've had more cloudy days. It's been warm. It's not been hot on those, but it's been like today. It's warm, but it's pretty cloudy round this neck of the woods. I think there's been more of that than there's been days of glorious sunshine. But I guess it depends how you describe a good summer. For some in this country, as long as it ain't raining, it's a good summer. We are, of course, still awaiting the verdict on the Epping hotel. On this point, let's listen to a voice note from Jeremy. It's a last-minute plea from him to the Home Office.
Hi, Ian. I can't believe my ears. The Home Office have intervened. The courts are independent. We're always being told the courts are independent. What's going on?
Yeah, what is going on? Unless the Home Office called as some kind of witness to this or a relevant voice, perhaps. It's a good point that he raises there. We await the finer details. We await the verdict as well. Let's speak with Philippa in Poole in Dorset. Back to that issue of the flag, Philippa. What have you got for us?
Ian, it's lovely to speak to you this afternoon because I haven't spoken to you for quite some time.
Yeah, nice to have you with us.
What I wanted to say to you was I am the flag when I'm driving in my car because I have got a mini convertible with the Union Jack flag on my roof permanently.
And on the rear lights as well.
Yes, I flipping love it. And everybody notices. I mean, I went up to London a few weeks ago and was driving around Trafalgar Square, and I stopped in some traffic, and there were some German students at the side of the road, and they were like pointing at my car and like smiling and everything, and I just thought, yes,
that's great.
To be British.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about that. I don't know how many models Mini made with the Union Jack or the Union flag on the roof, but you're right, they're there, aren't they?
You actually you can pay extra to have the flag on your roof.
Ah.
I mean, it's black and grey, but it's still the Union Jack flag, and I absolutely love it. And I want to praise the people that are going out there, putting the flags up around the town centres, and the ordinary people who are painting the roundabouts with the English flag. Good on them, that's what I say, because the council should be spending time collecting the rubbish in Birmingham, for example, and filling in the potholes. I think people are only enhancing the little white mini roundabouts.
I saw somebody. Yeah, I saw somebody paint the pothole with the Union flag, which I thought was. I don't know whether that was an AI-generated image, but I did think it looked rather nice. So you end up with a road, you know, round my neck of the woods. There's so many potholes. You end up with a road that's scattered with little St George's flags.
I know, and one of your callers was talking about when he went to America and there's like flags around all over. I really noticed that when I went over there, and we aren't as patriotic in the way that the Americans put up flags in their gardens and things. My ex-husband flies an English flag from his garden on a great big pole, which is first, when he first did it, I thought that's a bit weird, but now I'm sort of appreciating it, and I think we should do more of that. And the other thing is that my best friend is a costume maker, and she's recently made herself a whole outfit made out of a Union flag, a corset and a long fishtail skirt to go with it, and she looks absolutely fabulous, and she's making one for me now.
Amazing.
And I just think we should think about our heritage and think about our culture, and it's not just about carrying the flag, it's about encompassing everything that's British, everything that is English, everything that's
It's exactly
Scottish,
that.
Welsh.
It's exactly that. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, it's actually, I think it's, oddly, not only is there nothing wrong with it, I actually think it's quite healthy. I think it makes a society broader and more meaningful and fruitful. And it does all of those things as well. Philippa, I'm going to move now just to get another voice on. You've been great. What a lovely call. Love the mini story. Thank you to Philippa in Paul. Reference trains. Mike says trains will still work in Spain, Greece, Portugal, Italy and Germany, but not in our tin pot country. It's a good point, actually, isn't it? And I'm sure maybe the rail workers are not going on strike because of electronic ticketing, which has been around for a long time now. Steve, somewhere in Wales, says, afternoon, Ian, regarding the English Union flags. Under consecutive governments, the way they have treated the English people about the use of flags has been totally deplorable, to be honest. It's like they are second-class citizens in their own country. Thank you very much indeed for that, Steve. This is Mark in Lincolnshire on flags. Mark, afternoon to you.
Afternoon, Ian, mate.
Hiya.
Hi there. Yeah, flags. I don't think there's anything to be ashamed of. I'm quite pleased with the raising the colours movement, as it is. Yeah, I mean, I've just ordered my own St George's flag.
Nice.
Which will be going up on my nice, huge TV aerial pole.
Someone's making a lot of money out of flags at the moment, right?
Well, yes, absolutely. But I think, on a more serious level, I think, nobody seems to ever have a problem with the Palestine flag. Nobody has a problem with the India flag or the Pakistan flag or any other flag in the entire world you can apparently put up. A council won't take it down. We all know they won't take it down.
Yeah.
But you put up, in particular, if you put up a St George's flag, well, that's going to fall off and it's going to land on somebody's car and it'll kill them.
It's a very bad thing indeed.
And it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's absolutely ridiculous. And where this comes from, which is not really mentioned much, to be honest, is... you have the Marxist left which push this narrative that it's somehow associated, and you see them online. And they're always doing it. They've been doing it recently, obviously a lot more recently with, all the flags that are suddenly going up.
Yep.
And what's to do with it? And the reason I particularly bought the St George's flag is because it's not just representative of England. What it actually also represents is Christianity, because that's the whole point, the St George's cross. Yeah, it's a symbol of, it's something that was used very much, in past times, the Crusades, that kind of stuff. And this is why I think a lot of people, particularly on the left, really dislike it, which is why they've tried to paint this narrative that it's somehow evil, this flag. It represents this, it represents that, it represents the other, blah, blah, blah. Whereas I'm very much of the opinion, Ian, if you have a problem in this country with the St George's flag, then quite frankly, pack your stuff and leave. Yeah? Because as far as I'm concerned, no Englishman should ever be frightened to put up their own flag in their country at the end of the day. And if somebody isn't happy with it for whatever reason, deal with it. Either deal with it.
And you're right. And I said this earlier, Mark. It's invariably the people that have a problem with it are not people who aren't British born or people who are visiting the country. It's usually some pasty councillor in a left-wing council somewhere who has decided to be offended on the possibility of other people's behalves. Those other people don't actually exist.
Absolutely. You know, this is the point, isn't it? I mean, this, you know, where I come from with the argument of, you know, why this is more of an ideological thing as anything else. Because it represents, you know, in particular, I think, you know, the Union flag, and by the way, it really annoys me when people are Union Jack. No, Jack's going ships, for goodness sakes. But I've just
we've only just got used to that education, haven't we, to be fair? I've tried to say it for years in the correct way, but sometimes we all fail. Listen, Mark, I've got to move on for no other reason than we've hit the clock, and we've got Jeremy Kyle coming in. He will get very grumpy with me if we don't. That is Mark in Lincolnshire. Richard says the Union flag is flown upside down. If it's flown upside down, it's a sign of distress for a ship or a person. I think we are in distress. Thanks for a great show. Or that might be true, but you struggle to... I mean, it's only a very mild difference. It's upside down because the thick white line that goes right across the flag in the middle, you know, there's the blue bit in the middle, the blue cross, red cross. Anyway, you know what I'm saying. There's lots of crosses on our flag. One side of it is thicker than the other side. The white line is thicker on one side than the other side. But if you saw a ship in the distance and it turned its flag round the other way to say, you know, we've got pirates on board, you'd have to have a good old pair of binoculars, wouldn't you, to spot that? But I'm sure that was the original intent. Listen, thank you very much indeed for that, Richard. More from you on the way. Jeremy Kyle with us as well. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
They take more territory, and again our response is, okay.
Well, what do you think we should do?
You've been bad again.
Well, what would you
let
suggest?
You
All right,
what's
your remedy then? If we declare war on them, have World War III? Is that what you want to do?
Well, ultimately, if Russia is going to keep invading people, then yes.
Yes. Well, you want World War III. Dan Hodges wants World War III. Page 1 tomorrow morning, Daily Mail. Let's have World War III. Are you going to send your kids out to fight for you?
Well, Mike.
Oh, you've gone mad, Dan.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Just got, coming up on 5 to 4. Simon says, maybe if we painted the potholes in the St George's flag, some councils might come and fix them. It's a good point, might kind of work. Oh, you can't do that, that's terrible. Well, fix them then. Rob says, just got back from 2 weeks in Greece. Flags everywhere. Try telling the Greeks to take theirs down. Good point. This one from Peter in York. My father-in-law was I think I read that one. Thank you, Peter, for that. Vince says, why is it it's only Labour-run councils removing our flag, but not other countries' flags? Is it because they're anti-British or because people within the council are not British? Any council that takes down a British flag is not fit for purpose. And that brings us back, Vince, and it's a great point to my original comment about who are the people saying we don't want a flag up. I don't sense, and I know this from the various debates we've had over the years about some local authorities have been a bit uncomfortable about celebrating Christmas or putting too many lights up. You know, it never comes from a non-Christian. It always comes from somebody in the council who's definitely of Christian extraction or originally. Well, that's how it seems to work. It's mental. Rona is in Lancashire. Rona, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for taking me on the show.
Pleasure.
Brilliant show.
Thank you, mate.
Get that in there. Credit where credit's due. However, I am an Indian Muslim lady, ringing from Lancashire. I live in between Preston and Blackburn.
Yep.
Very segregated areas, to be honest with you, although the diverse population is injecting into us at the moment. Can I just say I think it's disrespectful, it's distressing. I don't usually ring in. I'm very patriotic and I love my country. And how dare anybody out there, yes, I do agree with you, it usually is the Christian, or it's never a non-Christian, say we cannot put the United Kingdom or the St George's flag up.
Every time I see a councillor who talks about this and they come out with some tripe, as you will be aware, health and safety, it's not like a Muslim councillor or a brown or a black guy. It's usually just a white bloke going, we don't want to offend people like you, Rona, and you're not offended.
I am not offended. However, most of the people that I do know are not offended by the flag.
Yeah.
And then when they digest this and learn this, I know we're walking on eggshells with whatever the issue is, whether it's LGBTQ+1. I'm a nurse, registered nurse. I've been for 22 years.
Yep.
And I've worked in the health and safety area, etc., and all the government policies, which is all red tape. But that's a story. That's a talk for another day.
Sure.
However, where the flag is concerned, there are many people here that I know that are of Muslim, other cultures, creed, colours, religion, and they have no problem with it at all. So whoever this Mr. Magoo is, who's decided all of a sudden that, oh, you know what, we won't have a flag, you know, oh no, take it, you know.
I bet his name is Mr. Magoo as well.
Probably, then he's probably got a little car which he doesn't fit in.
And he's got those glasses, yeah.
Yeah, and he's probably got takes his dog for a walk every night because that's all he ever does in his life. However, just to say, if you've got the time, mate, okay, all right, to think about something, like, what can I do that'll look good on paper, what I've done today? This is not the way to go about it, all right? Yep. We love the country. Don't penalise the flag. Respect the Queen, because I did love her, okay, and she was wonderful. And I've always said one thing. Not only did she have to tolerate her whole family, her own family, and deal with them issues, she had to deal with the world globally as well. And we can't even look after 2 kids. So that flag needs to go up there, okay?
I love it. Rona, you've been brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Rona in Lancashire, first-time caller, British Muslim, and there it is. She doesn't give a toss, and neither does anybody she knows gives a toss.
I think I'm allowed to tell you. Look at me, Finn, yeah, good. Epping Forest have just been given an injunction to close the hotel, which means that the migrants, this is a massive moment. This is people power.
And surprising.
The council have taken on the Home Office and they've won, because I thought the judge would bend, right? I thought he'd be an ideological
Well, especially when the Home Office intervened.
Yeah.
That was going to be it.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a fact. Epping Council have gone to court and are basically getting that hotel closed, which means those migrants Because I thought that's what Labour wanted, I thought they wanted them out the hotels.
There is a slight quirk to this, though, Jezza, and that is that... Oh, it's just disappeared. There is a slight quirk. It was on my screen, and now it's disappeared.
So you don't know what the quirk is?
I can't bring you the slight quirk.
He's quirkless. Well done,
Can
Finn.
we get it back on, Phil?
On a serious note, though, it's massive, because Labour have said, and I quote, "We want migrants out of the hotel. That is our guarantee to you." People powering Epping, not the far right, mothers of concerned kids, right, have said, we want our council to close it down. The council have today won an injunction. The Home Office tried to stop that. That means Labour can be accused, quite justifiably, in not wanting to do the right thing.
Lawyers for the Home Office said that if a High Court judge grants temporary... See, that'll be the Home Office on the phone.
Asylum seeker's face being removed from Epping.
Lawyers for the Home Office said that if a High Court judge grants the temporary injunction, it runs the risk of acting as an impetus for further violent protests.
No. I tell you what it does, sorry. It acts as an impetus for other councils to listen to the people of this country